Izuku Midoriya was always a special child, always one who would help anyone in need no matter what. He had a strong sense of right and wrong, but there was just one small problem. Izuku Midoriya was the only boy in his class who hadn't manifested his quirk. While all his peers had manifested their own quirks, he was the only one who remained without a quirk. And in a society that thrived with everyone having quirks and individuality, Izuku was inevitably going to be labeled quirkless, or so he thought. With Izuku, he'd always known that not everyone was born equal. He'd known this ever since his classmates had unlocked their quirks, but still he had his own determination and beliefs. And so as he now stood before his childhood friend Katsuki Bakugo aka Kaken and his two cronies, behind him lying on the ground was their recent bully victim. That was mean Kaken. You made him cry. I won't let you hurt him anymore. Izuku knew it was useless. Ever since Kaken had got his quirk, their relationship had become strained. Kaken had become a bully, and sometimes his attitude became downright villainous. But now none of that mattered. Even though the boy behind him had a means to protect himself, it proved fruitless. And so Izuku had already moved in front of the boy, acting as a shield for the injured child. Katsuki laughed and punched his palm, creating a miniature explosion. You playing a hero, Deku? You don't even have a quirk. He said nothing. Kaken had made sure to remind him of it every day. He and his so-called friends had no qualms with beating him down despite his handicap. Today was no different, he thought, bracing himself for the inevitable. In another world, he would have kept quiet and taken the beating quietly, but this was a different world. A hero would never use his quirk to hurt someone innocent, he whispered, his tone laced with conviction. Katsuki reared his fist back. You should really learn your place, Deku. And this was where everything became different, the moment Bakugo got close. Izuku's entire body glowed with power, a golden aura that seemed to move to protect its user from harm. It formed a flimsy barrier in front of Izuku, and as soon as Bakugo's fist made contact, it pushed back. The resulting clash sent both kids flying away. The last sight that Izuku saw was Bakugo's cronies looking at him in fear, and the kid he had saved looking at him with the same look he would give when he saw a hero. And this would completely change his future. Doctor's office. Well, it seems as though young Izuku does have a quirk, although it is far different than from what I've ever seen before. Both Izuku and his mother were at the hospital after the fiasco with Bakugo, as they listened to the doctor's conclusion of Izuku's new quirk. You seem to be capable of manipulating as well as create a type of energy. Could you please summon your quirk again? There's a few tests I would like to have answered. With a nod, Izuku focused inward and searched for his power. After focusing on a warmth, he pulled the feeling upwards. As he opened his eyes, he saw the doctor staring at him in fascination. A gold sheen was covering Izuku head to toe. He noted it wasn't as strong as it was when he was facing Bakugo. As he turned to his mother, he saw that she and even the doctor seemed at peace. Then abruptly the glow receded, and almost as though they were broken from a trance, they stared at him in awe. The doctor cleared his throat as he spoke. Well, it seems as though I was right. Seeing the confused look from both parent and child, he decided to explain as simple as possible. Your quirk, Midoriya-kun, would be a very powerful asset to heroes. It seems you are capable of manipulating light, energy, but it seems a bit different than the norm. You are capable of what is closest to magic, and I don't mean the pulling a bunny out of hat trick. You see, your energy might be capable of many feats, as its very nature seemed to affect us passively, a sense of peace. And your quirk could be manipulated to create light-based objects, as I can recount from your tale about what happened with your friend. As the doctor finished his explanation, Izuku and his mother were thrilled. Izuku was ecstatic. He could be a hero. He could become like All Might. And then the doctor spoke again. Midoriya-kun, I would recommend that you train your quirk as much as you can. I shall make arrangements, as it is the first time we have ever encountered something as special as this. There are multiple incidents that have occurred due to the lack of experience in handling one's quirk. Hint, hint. I'm sure that within a few years you'll be in harmony with your quirk. The next day, it was a good day to be alive. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and Bakugo was running towards Izuku to deliver a beating, or would have if the teacher hadn't restrained by the teacher. Details about Izuku's newfound quirk spread around the school within just a few hours after the incident. Most were exaggerated about where he used his quirk to punch the living daylights out of Kaken and another where Bakugo fainted like a bitch when he saw the might of Izuku's quirk. The last one served to be the reason as for why Bakugo was being a little ball of sunshine right now. The teacher, after he made sure that Bakugo was not out to kill Izuku, explained to the class that the rumors were highly exaggerated and that it was merely Izuku's quirk awakening that caused both him and Katsuki to become unconscious. The rest of the day went normally, well, as normal as a world where superheroes were considered normal. Izuku was pestered by the class to showcase his quirk, while technically against the rules. Everyone knew that they were merely guidelines to follow. Taking a deep breath, Izuku willed the energy forward into his arm and made a small solid sphere the size of a ping-pong ball at most. And then he carefully made it move forward towards the class. And then he started changing its direction with an increasing ease, and then he started to change its shape, making it into a larger sphere, until he clenched his fist, making the sphere pop out of existence in a flurry of sparks. A round of applause broke out with muttering about how cool Izuku's quirk was. And through all of this, Izuku broke out a small, almost hesitant smile, and his eyes were filled with tears. He'd done it. He was finally able to be a hero, and he was accepted by his peers. Time skip, Izuku age 14. Izuku stared out the window as school was over. The past few years had been the best in Izuku's life. Although there it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine, it was enough for him to be happy about. After his quirk had appeared, his peers had patched up with him, some even apologizing for their behavior, well, except for Bakugo, that is. While Izuku has no anger towards Kaken, it is not the same vice versa. While Bakugo seems to stop antagonizing him like before, he still calls him Deku, but also his rival. Izuku had gained a small reputation in his school. He had always disliked bullies, and so he had made it a point to try and curb the number of cases of bullying in school. And while he didn't actively go searching for trouble, it seemed as though trouble came searching for him. He always came in between the bullies and the victim. While he didn't hurt any of the bullies, he had never hesitated in defending both the victim and himself. This, of course, had set him at odds with Bakugo, but after a few clashes against him along with a lot of joint detentions, Bakugo had started to mellow down, and also he had curved in his temper. His train of thought was interrupted when he heard explosions ringing out in the field. Izuku let out a sigh as he got up and started to walk towards the sound of the explosions. He felt the familiar thumb of his energy just beneath his skin. His energy had, of course, become an integral part of his life. It had merged with his body, providing a network of energy. 1. He had frequent trips to the doctor, mostly because after some time his quirk started to become activate without his knowledge, to which he found that his quirk was becoming a passively activated quirk, which in turn caused him to have a running system of energy in his body. After a many a test with the doctor, he had found his energy to be capable of healing many types of injuries, which ranged from scratches to the most advanced he had healed was a victim of a car accident. He came to a stop when he found the cause of all the explosions, namely a walking ball of destruction, Bakugo Katsuki aka Kaken. He calculated the scene in front of him, a few what seemed to be delinquents on the ground, while Bakugo was trying to blow up another delinquent who seemed to have a water-based quirk. He saw one of the people on the ground get up and run towards Kaken to tackle him. Izuku raised his arm, and a small rope of light extended and wrapped itself around the guy's leg, and with a pull, his face made contact with the ground, hard. This seemed to gain the attention of Bakugo and his opponent, the former of who had a smirk on his face. Taking advantage of his distracted opponent, Bakugo put him down with a haymaker. Izuku, on the other hand, walked up to each person and healed the minor bruises and scratches most likely from the fight. By the time he was done, he saw Kaken waiting for he and Bakugo were not best of friends as they used to be. They had a mutual respect for each other, and Izuku had always proven to Bakugo that he was on the same level as he was, although all of that were behind him. Bakugo had changed after the continuous fights with Izuku. He had stopped being much of a bully, but his personality had left much to be desired. And he was always able to take his frustration out on some of the idiots trying to boss around the weak. And soon enough, Izuku joined him. While Izuku was diplomatic and kept damage to a minimum, while also making sure the proper measures were taken before, much like informing the teachers. Bakugo was a punch first, ask questions later type of approach person. The teachers had almost always turned a blind eye to the problems of these types, which was why they didn't get detentions most of the time. As they walked to the teacher's room, they had been thanked by said teacher where he left them and headed to where the Rouge students were being kept. Bakugo took this opportunity to speak. "I had it under control. You didn't need to butt in." It lacked the heat, and he was sure that Bakugo was just making small talk with him. Izuku raised an eyebrow, but merely smirked and returned the friendly banter. Sure you did. I just didn't want to get called by the teacher because they caught you fighting. Because for some strange reason, they think we always have a hand in everything. Who cares what they think? They're literally sheep, Bakugo replied with a scoff. While Izuku didn't like how Bakugo put it, he knew that it was true. It was a sad fact. Are you applying for the UA? The question was sudden and abrupt. Izuku stared at Kakin, who was staring at him unflinching. It was no secret that Bakugo was applying for UA, and Izuku also plans of doing the same. Yeah, I've done the mock tests. And we both know that UA is the best. Mom says the same. Bakugo said nothing, and with a nod he left Izuku to his own devices. Izuku stared at the retreating form of his friend and let his feet take him to the hospital, where he was going to having his appointment with the doctor, as well as continue his internship under him. Due to the various effects with his quirk, he had regular contact with the doctor. His mother at the beginning had made it a point to visit the doctor every time Izuku had experienced problems or any time his quirk acted out, which was when Izuku had a heightened emotional state. And whenever he had a nightmare, Izuku would bathe the entire room in a golden light, and his mother had become worried even after repeated assurances from both him and the doctor. Soon enough, after Izuku had turned 12, he had asked the doctor to issue an internship under him, as it would let him gain a better control of his quirk. The cause had been when Izuku had witnessed a small accident, and a lady with blonde hair and 2 pigtails and a green haori from the crowd had healed the person to the best of her abilities and had saved his life. And with his motivation set in stone, Izuku had begun his apprenticeship with the doc. The checkups were done to find whether his quirk had undergone any mutations, as had been frequent when he was young. The doctor had always prescribed him on a routine of physical exercises to keep his body healthy enough to contain his quirk. Izuku had also taken up karate as a club, which had led him to have impressive physique for his age. Doctor's office. The doctor finished his checkup and turned to Izuku, who had finished buttoning up the apprentice coat to his frame. It seems as though you are in good health, Izuku-chan. Your quirk continues to amaze me. It seems as though it breaks down anything extra and fuels your reserves, as well keep energy for your body to function longer than average. Izuku gave a small smile at the doctor. He had always been able to keep his training consistent due to his quirk. Being a passive effect, it had done wonders. Izuku had a physique suited for athletic individuals, a solid 5 feet 9 inches. He had to undergo rigorous training so that his body could keep up with his quirk. His body was with a coat body fat, which covers powerful muscles. While not particularly evident, it was noticeable. His hair was still messy, but had an array of spikes in the front. It was the first time on record that a quirk could be stronger than the user. But Izuku hadn't complained. The pros far outweighed the cons. Izuku and the doctor went about their rounds together and had consulted with many patients about their ailments. Izuku had a knack of understanding healing arts and procedures. It came as easy as battle arts and tactics came to him. This allowed Izuku to have an extensive amount of medical knowledge in his brain. Izuku had also practiced his abilities under supervision of the doctor to heal minor injuries, soon after which they had moved on to harder and more complex injuries, and with practice Izuku was able to do these procedures alone, yet he had always felt inexplicably tired. He gave an awkward smile as one of the old ladies thanked him for his time. He had made many breakthroughs with his quirk, yet he had never been able to actually let loose. His training with the defensive aspects of his quirk was going well enough, but he had truly wanted to experiment. His healing capabilities were marvelous, as dubbed by the doc, as he was able to help and heal patients, as well the fact his aura allowed him to induce a sense of peace with the patient. Regarding the more offensive and supportive capabilities, he had practiced creating constructs which lead to achieve a certain level of proficiency in the art of his construction aspects. The more complex the structure, the more energy and concentration it needed. But once he was familiar with the object he was constructing, he could project it in less than a second. He could also make his projections denser by saturating it with his energy. Then was his natural aura and a small sensory field. His aura had helped him in calming down patients, and of such whereas his sensory field when actively used can give him a rough idea on his surroundings, such as the number of people, as well other details. And then was his favorite augmentation. He could in a sense augment limbs with his energy, allowing him a great array of abilities, increase of strength, speed, reinforcement, as well as an all-around battle upgrade. He was brought back to reality when the doctor bonked him on the head while berating him for scaring the patients with his muttering. The next day was the final day he had in school, after which they would enroll in academies to pursue their dream of becoming heroes. The next day, as Izuku sat in his classmates around him were all excited as they waited for their teacher to get in the classroom. As the teacher entered, he told them all to settle down, after which he gave them all a heartfelt farewell and wishing them all the best of luck, as well as telling that he believes in all of them. Although one Katsuki Bakuga smirked and decided to have some fun. "Hey teach, don't lump me together with these extras." As the rest of the class realized that they were all insulted, an uproar rose within them, causing most of them to get out of their seats, waiting to fight Bakugo. The blonde had a savage grin as he stood on his desk, miniature explosions appearing on his palms, showing that he was ready to fight as well. He shouted at them, "Oh please, as if your pathetic quirks could match up to mine." "Oh yeah, you're enrolling to UA High, right Bakugo?" He still had his grin as he pointed to the sky and shouted to everyone around him. "That's right, I'm gonna be the next big hero, surpassing even All Might himself, fame and fortune, and it all starts at UA High." "Ah, well then you'll have a good competition. Midoriya-kun is also enrolling to UA as well." As their teacher told everyone that, they all immediately turned their heads toward Izuku, who while used to the stairs was still a bit embarrassed, which was given away by his wife's eyes, as well as the small blush on his face. Then, everyone broke into a conversation. "Oh yeah, Midoriya is not that hard to believe, I mean. Midoriya has a really powerful quirk. I heard that he managed to stop a lot of delinquents. And his quirk is even capable of healing and other cool stuff." Izuku turned his head towards Bakugo, who was giving him a look of anticipation. Even though Bakugo acknowledges that he has a powerful quirk, he believes that his own explosion quirk is better. "Well, I wish everyone the best of luck, and so let's begin with our final day." After classes ended, Izuku was walked towards his home with a beat in his step. After bidding farewell to all his classmates, he left in a hurry to meet his mom, as he had promised to help her cook today. He took a left and reached the tunnel that would let him reach his home faster. Suddenly, he felt his sensory abilities warn him, and so he subconsciously augmented his limbs and jumped to the side, and the place where he was just a moment ago was immediately covered by a sludge that seemed to take shape. "I didn't expect you to dodge that one, kid. I won't hurt you much if you stay still now. I have a rather troublesome shadow that's following me." And with that, the sludge man shot forward to capture Izuku, who was frozen in his place at the sudden shift in his day. Suddenly, he snapped back to his senses when his energy burst from his form, erecting a shield that halted the villain's advance. Izuku's eyes sharpened, and suddenly more energy burst from his form and transformed into golden weapons and shot towards the villain. He aimed to stall and not to injure, but was surprised when the villain laughed as all the constructs passed through him. "I'm in liquid form. Nothing you do can affect me." And with a bellow, the villain shifted to become a tidal wave, completely trapping Izuku within him. Then the sludge villain started to possess Izuku's body, who retaliated with all his power. A bright light erupted from his frame, slowly fighting the sludge from his body. The villain was surprised before it redoubled its efforts. This power, it's incredible to be capable of putting up such a fight. Izuku's airway was suddenly blocked, causing a sharp pain as well as even greater panic. Izuku tried to pull his hands away, but was met with no other change to his situation. He then called his quirk to the surface and tried, as futile as it was, to fight the villain. His quirk rushed to fill the demand, solidifying itself to rise to the demand. Izuku concentrated harder and poured all his energy to force the opponent to pull away. The brightness from Izuku's quirk blinded the villain, and the energy seemed to heat up further, preventing the villain to come close. As the villain was finally forced to let Izuku go, he sneered as he attempted to intimidate Izuku, only to see a sight that stopped him cold. Izuku's body was covered with a gold aura. His normal green eyes had been replaced by golden orbs of light that shone with power. But before Izuku could move, the aura receded, leaving Izuku powerless and on the verge of unconsciousness. The villain stared at Izuku, before his expression changed to a twisted smile. "Yes, with that power, I will defeat him." With that, he was about to pounce on Izuku, only to stopped by a sudden voice. "You won't do anything, why?" "Because I am here." And so the last thing Izuku saw before he slipped to unconsciousness was All Might rearing his arm back. Aftermath. As Izuku was beginning to come back to senses, feeling like someone was shaking him. As he opened his eyes, he realized that he was actually looking at All Might himself. He was shocked at first, and then he screamed, scooting a few feet away from the hero. All Might simply laughed. Ha ha ha, are you all right, kid? Gave me a scare for a second. The poor boy was speechless, as he was meeting his idol for the first time. He was unable to form an actual sentence, but his mind was overloaded with multiple thoughts. In his current state, he simply asked All Might, hold on. See could why you signed this. As he pulled out his notebook, he realized that All Might had already signed his signature on it. After continuously thanking All Might for it, he saw that All Might was coughing a bit, and he turned away from Izuku. Izuku's sudden medical experience kicked in and ran to All Might and grabbed him. The latter, who didn't notice in his desperation to get away, jumped high into the skies. When All Might felt something tugging at his legs and saw that Izuku was on him, he said, Kid, I know that you're a fan and all, but could you let go? I prefer that I don't get killed. Oh yeah. As the two landed on top of a building, Izuku finally let go, taking in deep breaths, while All Might was looking at the city. After a few moments, All Might said, Oh shit. All Might, are you what the All Might? You're smoking. Oh and dash. Suddenly, All Might disappeared into a heavy cloud of smoke, shocking Izuku. As the smoke cleared up, Izuku was now looking at an incredibly thin man, wearing All Might's clothing. The boy was beyond shocked, seeing that his idol had turned into. A cough and a stream of blood interrupted his thoughts. Are you bleeding? It's no problem. You can't say that when you're losing this much blood. The hero simply sighed, and had both him and Izuku sit on the floor and told him. Izuku immediately started using his quirk to lessen the blood flowing out, and started using his quirk to try and find out what was wrong, all while the hero simply stared at him, feeling inexplicably calm, yet he could feel the energy slowly taking away his exhaustion. After a few silent minutes, it was Izuku who broke the silence. All Might, what happened? I was trying to diagnose your condition with my quirk. I know I shouldn't have without your permission, but I suddenly went with the flow. I got the feedback from my quirk. All Might, you have severe internal damage. Could you please tell me what happened? All Might stared at the form of Izuku. He could see the emotions dancing in his eyes. He felt touched at the care expressed by the boy, and so he lifted his shirt up, and Izuku saw heavy scarring all over his left side. It made him sick just looking at the wound. All Might told him. It was 5 years ago. I had fought an extremely powerful villain. He managed to destroy half of my respiratory system and the whole of my stomach. Izuku covered his mouth with his hands to stop the gasp coming. All Might, if he noticed, didn't bother and continued. I've been able to hold my hero form for only a few hours. No way. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but that is the truth. I continue to fight crime because I cannot let the symbol of peace be daunted by evil. As a pro must always be willing to risk their life. Izuku gulped. He could feel the weight carried in those words. Izuku contemplated the information, his mind going into overdrive. It explained why there was only limited amount of footage of All Might the past few years. It then struck him at how taxing the injury was causing All Might. What's your name, young man? Izuku turned to All Might, who was giving him a kind smile. It's Midoriya, Izuku, sir. Well, Midoriya, I must ask of you to keep this new information a secret. You mustn't mention it, even by accident. Izuku nodded and whatever Izuku wanted to say was washed out by an explosion that took place a few blocks away from them. Both of them looked at each other and suddenly rushed down the building and to the place where the explosion took place, only for them to have their blood run cold. In the middle of the debris and fire was the same villain that All Might had fought and its newest victim. Oh no, Kaken. A few minutes earlier, Katsuki Bakugu wasn't having a very good day. He was out minding his business and planned on going to the arcade, then suddenly he got attacked by a sentient blob of sewage. You have quite the quirk, don't you? The sewage asked as he wrapped his body over Katsuki. In response, Katsuki let out another explosion, causing more collateral damage. Very nice. With your body, I'll be able to beat All Might and that other kid. Katsuki, in retaliation, continued using his quirk on their surroundings. Kid, calm down. One of the heroes trying to help him called out. With all of your explosions, I can't get near enough to help you. The hero, Kimui Woods, looked to the other heroes for help. I got my hands full. These fires are a bigger problem. There are still civilians in those buildings. Backdraft, the firefighter hero, called out over the noise. Someone else needs to go. I can't get in there. There's not enough space for me. MT Lady replied. Izuku, who was close to having a breakdown, ran to the front of the crowd, leaving All Might on his own. Izuku watched the chaos and was filled with guilt and dread. He looked to Kimui Woods and asked, Why? Why won't you help him? Why won't you save him? He asked faintly. He needs help. How is this so hard to understand? Wood and fire do not mix, kid. We have to wait for a hero with a suitable quirk to come. Izuku's eyes went back to Bakugo, who was getting desperate. He could understand what Bakugo was feeling. Izuku was consciously fighting his desire to abandon all reason and rush into the fight. Suddenly, he heard the talk of the crowd. I wonder why All Might isn't here. I mean, he was chasing after this guy, wasn't he? All Might is here. Really? Yeah, I saw him chase that sludge guy. Where the hell is he? Izuku's eyes filled with tears. He was sure exactly what happened. All Might must have dropped it while mid-air. Izuku felt the guilt. It was because of him. And that was what broke the camel's back. Izuku let out a scream as a golden shroud of energy covered him. His body had already moved before his brain could process what he was doing. His quirk enhanced his speed, fueled by his adrenaline, let him make a beeline straight towards the villain and Bakugo, his body working overdrive to evade the debris and explosions. The screams by the hero and the crowd seemed distant, but it caught the attention of the villain. You? I'll kill you, the villain screamed out before he shot a ball of sludge towards Izuku, who retaliated by conjuring a barrier, and without slowing down, Izuku channeled his energy to form a ball of energy which shot towards the eye of the villain, stunning him for a few seconds. Kaken! Izuku ran up to his childhood friend and ripped the villain's sludge off of his face. He then used his quirk to scrape of the sludge from Bakugo. What the hell are you doing here, Izuku? It's just, you looked like you needed help. All Might, who was enthralled by the sheer courage and determination of the child whom he met just minutes ago, suddenly felt disgusted with himself. He couldn't stand by and watch this destruction continue. His body slowly began to let off steam. The sludge man tried knocking Izuku away, but suddenly all of Izuku's energy lashed out and created a barrier which separated both Izuku and Bakugo from the villain. Izuku wobbled to his feet, holding Bakugo up. He felt almost all his energy leave as the villain reformed. He could see the anger in the villain's eyes. In a last-ditch attempt, Izuku used his energy and augmented his strength and threw Bakugo onto the crowd, where he was caught by Kimui Woods. You! The villain sneered, his body expanding. I'll kill you. As Izuku waited to be devoured by the villain, he thought about how much more he wanted to accomplish in his life, but he had a small smile on his face. At least Kaken is safe. Just before he was about to be devoured, a burst of wind shot by him. When he looked up, he saw All Might in his hero form bleeding from his mouth. I really am pathetic, aren't I? To have to make a child step up and pick up my slack. We'll have to remedy that. All Might turned to the villain and ripped his arm away and reared it back. Izuku could feel the weight behind the punch, and with a roar, All Might screamed. Detroit, smash. As his right fist made contact with the sludge villain, a wall of air so solid blew the villain away, as well as causing the heroes to shield the civilians from the force that followed the punch. Everyone had trouble to stand straight as a testament to the power backed behind the punch. Slowly, drip by drip, rain started to fall from the skies, ending the fight and slowly extinguishing all the remaining fires. After the fight, as Izuku walked home after being checked on by the medics, he was in a way happy, even though he came close to losing his life. The heroes had come to him personally and told what he did was foolish, but also told him what he did was the mark of a true hero. It also had nothing to do with the fact that MT Lady gave him a kiss on the cheek for his bravery. Nope, not at all. Bakugo was still unconscious and was taken to the hospital, and so he was midway through the trek towards him home when suddenly, I am here. All Might, I thought you were being surrounded by the reporters. That was no problem, because I am all blarg. As he turned back to actual form, coughing up blood, shocking Izuku. After that little commotion, he looked at Izuku again and told him, Kid, I just want to say thank you, and to give you an offer. What do you mean? I saw you run head first into danger, while I just stood there among the crowd, watching it all. Even when the pro heroes stood still, you young Midoriya-kun, you ran towards certain death, and you won. The pros themselves congratulated you, and it is as they said. Every hero, all had one thing in common. Their bodies moved on their own, without a single thought. Izuku, hearing all that coming from his idol's mouth, went on his knees, overwhelmed and feeling tears coming out of his eyes. As he looked at All Might once more, he told the boy, "That is why you'll be the one to inherit my power. One for all." I have finished rewriting this because I had finally got a name for the power, and also I felt it would be a waste to abandon this story. This idea had been on my mind for a while. Basically, the gist is this: Izuku is going to have a battle mage type character build. His other quirk is basically ether, not the MCU version. It's the fifth element. I had actually designed the power before I found out about ether, so I had adopted the name. I had found it after I was desperate for a name. I also thank everyone who has reviewed and suggested the names for Izuku. Also, there's one more small change in One for All. It said that it unlocks the potential power in its user. Well, in this universe, it has another power. The power to amplify, not just the physical aspects, but in this case his other quirk. Izuku will be OP, but he won't be a Gary Stu. Hopefully. For those who want to know about the powers, please PM me or leave a review. I'll try my best to get to it, and I'll surely have them answered. Pairing is going to be Ochako and Momo with Izuku. Also, please review on how the story is, and if you want to have Izuku, keep the Deku name. Feel free to leave suggestions on his powers or anything in general. What? All Might burst out laughing when he saw Izuku's confused face. What's that face for? I'm asking you, if you want to inherit my power. Izuku looked confused. You really doubt me that much? Izuku panicked and tried to deny it, saying that he actually believed him, but he was cut off by All Might. I have many secrets, but I never lie. All Might then held out his right hand and let his palm glow slightly as he continued. I have the ability to stockpile and transfer my power. That's the quirk I inherited. It's called One for All. Izuku was shocked. He'd never heard of a quirk that could be transferred from one person to another, and why was it being offered to him, of all people? But why me? All Might smiled at Izuku and pointed at him. I've been searching for a successor for a long while now, and back there, you were more heroic than anyone else. You had also shown me that even in the face of evil, someone will step up to stop it. And that person today was you. Izuku choked back a sob. His idol was praising him and had just told him his greatest secrets. And so, young Midoriya, I ask of you, will you inherit my power? Will you be the successor of One for All? Izuku knew this was a no-brainer. He'd just been told All Might's greatest secret and been offered his power because he was seen as worthy. Izuku stared resolutely at All Might and answered with conviction. Yes, sir. I accept. All Might beamed at his response. Excellent. Now I want you come to Dagoba Municipal Beach tomorrow at 9 a.m. to start your training, so make sure you get your rest tonight. Municipal Beach. All Might sat on a fridge in his normal form, waiting for Izuku to turn up to his first day of intense training. He didn't have to wait long, as he heard footsteps not too far away from where he was sitting, and when he saw a mop of green messy hair, he knew it was Izuku. Midoriya, my boy, you have showed up for your training. All Might jumped down to meet Izuku. For the first time since All Might met Izuku, which wasn't that long, he properly got a look at him. Standing a respectable 5 feet 9 inches, wearing a white tracksuit with a black stripe running down the arms, his jacket was left open, showing a plain black t-shirt. 1. He also seemed to have prior physical training, as he could see some muscles on his body. As All Might finished his analysis of his new apprentice and successor, he looked into Izuku's eyes to find no sense of doubt or fear. Now, young Midoriya, I know you already have a quirk, but it doesn't seem to be of the normal kind. At this, All Might received a nod from Izuku, to which he continued. I will change your training regime after you tell me what your quirk is and how well you can use it. Izuku took a deep breath to calm himself, after which he described his quirk, which he had named as Ether, on the insistence of both his mother and the doctor. He explained the different aspects of his quirk, how it could be used to construct objects of light, healing capabilities, the passive effects such as a sensory field, aura, as well as passive regeneration, and of course the ability to augment himself. He then sighed when it came to a problem he could not overcome so far. When I try healing people or would try to push myself to go further, all I do is end up exhausting myself. While my stamina and my energy reserves increase, they still lack power. To prove this, Izuku created a dagger of light and threw it at the fridge All Might had sat on. The moment it hit, the dagger went in a few inches before dispersing. When he turned to All Might, he saw him in deep thought. After a few seconds of silence, All Might turned to Izuku and told him, "While I may not have understood the problem entirely, young Midoriya, what is it you feel when you use your quirk?" Izuku was silent for a moment. What did he feel? Thinking back on it, he always felt at peace, like he was wrapped a warm blanket. When Izuku explained this to All Might, he received a nod in return. "I see. Well, what I say may feel out of place. When I use One for All, I don't know how to explain it well, but I clench but while pour all my heart into the attack and yell from the depths in my heart, smash." As All Might did a punching pose, Izuku had already started muttering to himself. "Considering that both mine and All Might's quirks are different than the norm, does that mean I have to find out a suitable position or a phrase for powering up my quirk? But since my quirk has multiple uses like healing, and then there's manipulating my energy, what if they all have different positions? What if they have lengthy activation periods? Would I be able to do so in combat? What if Izuku was cut short by a small chop to the head by All Might?" Izuku looked to All Might clutching his head before he looked a bit sheepish. "While it is good to analyze your quirk, you must now train your body to become the perfect vessel for my quirk. If not, you will not be able to use my quirk safely." Hearing this, Izuku was surprised. "It makes sense, I guess. My quirk is similar. It's too powerful for my body, and sometimes it acts out and mutates itself to suit myself better." All Might was surprised, but was now worried as they had no idea if the introduction of One for All would kill Izuku. He decided it would be better if they consulted with someone first. "Now, your training is simple. Clear this beach of all the junk within 10 months. While doing so, make use of your quirk and your body corresponding to the situation. I saw that you were able to augment your strength with your quirk during the incident with the other villain." At this, Izuku shudders a bit. In a way, One for All is similar, yet far more potent. "But now, young Midoriya, we start your training to become the next symbol of peace." And thus started Izuku's extensive training for succeeding his predecessor. Time skip, 2 months. The past 2 months were absolutely brutal. The endless cycle of wake up, eat, train, eat, train, eat, sleep became a ritual for Izuku. He became more fit, and his body seemed more compact, and his progress was outstanding. Izuku, when not training with All Might, he spent his time working on his quirk, where he had a few discoveries. Since he lacked power and got exhausted very easily, after a series of soul-searching by meditation, a lot of kabuki poses, and followed by countless hours of work, he made a breakthrough. Which is also why he is dancing around like a nut job. All Might was a bit peeved on how his successor was acting and decided to intervene to preserve both their sanities. "Young Midoriya, what seems to have brought you into such a happy state?" As soon as Izuku heard All Might's voice, he stopped cold in his tracks, which was in the middle of a slightly complex dance move. As Izuku crashed, he was almost immediately in front of All Might, seemingly uninjured. "I did it, All Might. I finally understood how my quirk works. Okay, these next 3 paragraphs are an info dump. So skip him if you want." Basically, he figured out that he has to invoke the concept and use words as a trigger for powering the spell. And as if to show his breakthrough, Izuku summoned a similar energy knife. He showed the first, although the speed it took was quite less. And then when Izuku threw it at another fridge, and much to All Might's shock, the knife cut through the fridge and exited out the back before dispersing. "Wah, how did? Young Midoriya, it hasn't even been 5 months. How did you get to this level already?" Blushing a bit from the praise his idol was giving, Izuku reverted to muttering and stuttering out broken sentences until a quick chop by All Might stopped him. As Izuku took a deep breath, he started. "Well, after you told me how you activated One for All, I tried a lot of different ways to do the same, until, well, instead of forcing it to happen, I did what I thought was natural. Well, that took some time too. What I just demonstrated was a week worth of training." "So what is it that you did?" "Well, I found that my energy is easy to control, so manipulation was pretty simple. When I tried to focus on what I wanted it to do, it was pretty much smooth road from there. Like for the knife, I summoned it with the shape in mind, and then invoked the concept of pierce, and well, there you have it. But then again, just doing that also caused a few more problems. My control is shot to hell. After that success, I tried invoking the concept of awakening, and while doing that caused me to gain more power, it ruined my control. All Might suddenly shifted to his buff form. Young Midoriya, you have far exceeded my expectations, and to think we've only scratched the surface of your potential. This has got me fired, you dash. And then he reverted back to his original form, coughing up some blood. Well then, I'll have to up your training again, seeing as we have lots to improve. Izuku, overcome with happiness, ran to All Might and hugged him. Thank you, All Might. Call me Tashinori, young Midoriya. Time skip 5 months. When All Might first saw the beach, he was astounded. The clear water and the shores without any junk, and to top it all off, he saw his successor swimming in the ocean, training his body to the maximum. He did all of this in 7 months. His control over his own quirk was astounding. He was able to create moves which were modified from other heroes to the things he had seen from his games, and even his own original techniques. He was brought out of his thoughts when Izuku walked towards him for the next phase of his training. All Might suddenly shifted to his buff form and stood in front of Izuku, his face glowing with pride. Young Midoriya, never had I expected you to reach this level in so little time. You have proved to me that I was indeed correct in choosing you as my successor. Izuku all the while had a goofy grin on his face, knowing that he had made his idol proud. All Might plucked one of the hairs from his head and held it in front of Izuku. He had consulted with multiple specialists in the field of quirks, and all of them had given him the go after he and Izuku had visited them multiple times. Take this to heart, Izuku. You earned this power fair and square. Izuku felt nothing but determination flowing throughout his whole body. That was until he heard 3 words from All Might that turned all that overflowing determination into pure confusion. Now eat this. All Might boomed, referring to the long blonde strand of hair in his hand. Huh. You need to eat this so that you gain my DNA for you to use one for all. This is not exactly how I thought this would go, Izuku said to himself as he took the hair from All Might and stared at it for a couple seconds before putting it in his mouth and swallowing the hair with a big gulp. I ate the hair, but I don't feel any different, Izuku stated as he looked around his body to look for any changes. Of course not. You need time to digest it. Now, young Midoriya, we shall move to combat. Wait, what? No, I'm not ready for combat. We haven't even used one for all. What if there were repercussions with my quirk and dash? He was cut off when Tashinori said. Young Midoriya, I went combat simulation. Oh, but where do we go, sensei? I'm glad you asked, young Midoriya. We are going to a training ground beside UA campus. Izuku went wide-eyed. He would get to train near the UA campus. But suddenly he asked All Might. Is that allowed? I mean, wouldn't it be favoritism towards me, since others are not allowed to use their quirks outside tests and all? All Might stared at Izuku before a small smile of pride broke out on his face. You still think of others, even when you are a chance most would take without hesitation. I have truly chosen a worthy successor. Izuku blushed a bit at the praise. But worry not, young Midoriya. There is a reason as to why I am suggesting this. While others have had their quirks since childhood, they will have an instinctive grasp over it, much like you with your other quirk. But since you now have one for all with you, you will not have those instincts yet. And you have seen what I am capable of, haven't you? At this, he received a nod from Izuku. Izuku understood what All Might was trying to say. He wouldn't have control over his quirk, which may cause damage not only to him, but to those around him as well. Let's go, sensei. UA Underground Training Facility. As they reached the training ground, he saw 2 individuals that made him stop in his tracks. Recovery Girl and the Principal Nizu. As soon as he was about to pass out from the excitement and fear, the principal spoke. Tashinori-kun, is this your successor? Yes, Principal. Allow me to introduce Midoriya Izuku, the successor of One for All. It's very nice to meet you, Principal Nizu, sir. The principal stared at Izuku before finally making eye contact. I can see why he chose you. Your eyes, it's the same fire he had. Please, Izuku-kun, there is no need to fear. I was here to see young Tashinori and you before I leave. Please, use this ground to your fitting. With that, Principal Nizu left, waving at them cheerfully. So, Izuku, step into the middle of the training ground and hit the dummy while channeling One for All. There will be some knockback. So brace yourself. With that, both Tashinori and Recovery Girl stood to the side as Izuku went in front of the dummy. He took a deep breath and reared his fist before punching it with as much strength he could muster, yelling in the process. And while the punch was powerful, he couldn't seem to channel any of One for All's power in it. Izuku looked at his hand a little sad, seeing that he couldn't muster the extra power, but before he could apologize, All Might spoke once again. "Don't worry about it, young Midoriya. It is all right, fail the first time. Your body hasn't adjusted itself to One for All. But remember what I said. Clench your, but while pouring all your heart into the attack, and yell from the depths in your heart, smash. So put everything I can into the punch." "Right, I can do this," Izuku murmured to himself as he prepared himself, once more pulling his arm back and closed his eyes in concentration and searching for the spark. When suddenly he felt it, he grasped the feeling before opening his eyes and yelling at the top of his lungs. Smae wash. Izuku's fist, covered in a red aura with lightning, made contact with the dummy, sending it flying backwards and creating a huge crash as the dummy had caved in on itself and broke to splinters from the sheer power of Izuku's punch. Grinning like he was a kid at a candy store, Izuku tried raising both his arms in the air, but only felt one go up and then felt a large throb of pain in his right one. Izuku immediately went pale and tears began to form in the corners of his eyes as he clutched his shoulder, falling to his knees and screaming as agonizing pain that he could now feel shooting up and down his arm as it limply hung to his side, somehow bare, as the cloth had ripped off in the punch. Recovery Girl and Tashinori ran towards Izuku, but when they reached halfway through, Izuku's arm was covered in a golden aura much more potent than what Izuku and Tashinori were used to, while Recovery Girl stared in awe. Once the glow subsided, the arm was seen to be in a better state than before, but was still not completely healed. Recovery Girl soon reached Izuku and assessed the damage before using her quirk to heal the remaining damage. Interesting. Midoriya-chan, your quirk seems to be very powerful. It sensed that you were injured, and it thus tried its best to heal you, and it did in a sense, but it seems that it depends on your own will and knowledge for it to work. The arm was healed, and was in a sense reinforced, and it seems to be doing the same to your body, all but at a very slow pace. Does that mean that I'll be immune to the knockback? Izuku asked hopefully. In response, Recovery Girl gave a hearty laugh. Oh no, dear, nothing that godlike. It is just that your quirk is trying to get you used to it better. While I can assure you, if you try something like this again, your arm will still feel the knockback, but maybe at a lesser extent to this, maybe around 4% less. Although this could work for you, as you can now train your quirk to heal yourself, and not just your manipulation, as Tashinori-kun told me while we were there. And then with a nod started Izuku's last leg of training before the UA exams. Time skip. One day prior to UA exams. Izuku woke up to the beeping of his alarm, which showed that it was 8 a.m. All Might had told him to rest yesterday and today so as to not burn out. When he went downstairs for breakfast, he saw his mom making breakfast. She hadn't changed much over the years, which means she didn't grow short or chubby, as she didn't have to stress over much about Izuku. Thank you, Marinette. As Izuku greeted his mom and sat at the table, he thought about how much progress he made these 10 months with All Might, especially the last 2 months. He understood how his original quirk worked, and he went further beyond by creating moves which would help him in various situations where he may need to restrain, knock out, as well, which would help him fight in different scenarios. It may also help that he took a lot of ideas from his manga collection. He able to reduce the knockback of One for All by limiting how much energy he would flood a part of his body. He did so by using his energy reserves as a dam, letting only what he needed to go out. While it wasn't a perfect solution, as it tended to leave him winded, as well as the fact of needing energy every time he wanted to use One for All, left him in a pinch. But it served useful for whenever he wanted to surprise or finish of his opponents in one go. His healing powers and his energy attacks were of course his primary mode of fighting. He learned multiple tactics and attacks by discussing with All Might, and by watching too many anime too. He had found that reading legends and trying to recreate them had a better success rate for some reason. Izuku, you're muttering again, his mother admonished him as she flicked his forehead. Izuku had the decency to look sheepish. His mother simply smiled. His mother was a constant in his life, always going out of her way and supporting him in whatever he did. She would always be there to pick him up from school after karate club, or would cheer him up whenever he felt down. He was sure that she was the best mother in the world. As they talked about random things, Izuku noticed that it was 10 a.m., wherein he left to his room after thanking his mother for the food. Once in his room, he took out his notebook where he wrote ideas for tactics and attacks. He was currently working on a large-scale attack as well as a binding spell to detain villains with extreme strength. He gave a small smile before flipping the pages. Chains of Heaven, Light's Law. Oh, that flower shield may be. Nah, oh, I should practice the construct barrage attack. And so Izuku went into making plans and studying his material for tomorrow's exam. UA campus. And the first step to my dream of becoming a hero, Izuku thought as he walked through the front gates of UA, only a little bit out of breath from the rush across Tokyo. Izuku was wearing a set of clothes consisting of a set of tracks and an open black jacket with a white muscle shirt. 3. As he was halfway through, he was met with a voice he hasn't heard in months. You finally reached, eh? Bakugo asked Izuku. Yup, you been practicing? Sure have, I aced the mock test. So did I, although I wonder if we'll meet anyone we know here. I doubt it. Anyway, I wanted to tell you something, prove that you're my equal, Izuku. I want people around me to make me stronger, not pull me down. With that, he left, leaving a wide-eyed Izuku staring at his retreating back. Thankfully, it was short-lived as he felt a tap on his shoulder and was met with the confused/excited smile of a girl. A girl? And then Izuku heard her speak. It'd be sad if you just stare at the building while the exam already starts in a few minutes. So let's go on, Annie. Izuku was in shock. A girl was talking to him. Oh no, he wasn't talking back. Suddenly, subconsciously, he activated his quirk, bringing him back to normal. Yeah, thanks for that. Oh, my name is Yurariko Ochako. Nice to meet you. My name's Midoriya Izuku. Let's go in then, Yurarika-san. When the two of them headed into the UA building, they were told to head to one of the main halls so that they could commence the written part of the exam. Izuku was well prepared for the written exam, which consisted of stuff he was quite familiar with or he could answer with using his analysis, obsession, of heroes and the stories which All Might told him. Sure, the odd question here and there threw him for a loop, but by the end Izuku was sure he had done well above his peers. Izuku was paying attention to present Mick's opening speech about the practical part of the exam, where he explained the rules and how the exam itself was going to be conducted. There was a student who he guessed was a sticker for the rules, given how he went on about how there was a fault in the information while simultaneously using exaggerated hand gestures. Present Mike quelled his doubts as well as giving the class a final piece of advice, which was to ignore the 0-point robot. Practical exam area. The old man that was driving the bus said that everyone had to get out. When Izuku got out of the bus, he was taken aback by the sheer size of the test arena, as it was literally the size of a city. Izuku scouted the competition. With Bakugo in another test site, he had a look at his fellow examinants. While most didn't catch his attention, there were some who did, the first being Yurarika-san, who was taking deep breaths. He momentarily wondered what her quirk was. Then was the kid who interrupted the practical speech. Of course, a lot of them were looking at him as well. This white muscle t-shirt doing little to hide his physique, and his height added to the mix with his black jacket served to deter people from him. A&D begin. Everyone turned around to where present Mike was and looked in confusion as his voice boomed across the large amount of land to each test site. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in a real fight. Run, run, run. Izuku thought about it for a brief second, and it made sense not having a countdown. As he looked towards the front entrance of the test site, he saw that everyone else was running towards it with pure determination. Izuku, seeing that everyone got a head start, knew that he would have to pick up slack. He channeled ether towards the soles of his feet, and after gathering and storing it, he released it all at once, shooting him forward. 1. Izuku then further augmented his body by releasing the restraints on his energy. As his speed was being boosted, he quickly reached the middle of the group. Knowing that it would be foolish to go with the group, Izuku shot towards a building and used another burst of ether to allow him to reach the roof of the building. He saw that there were pockets of robots everywhere, but then he saw the group fighting for points in a cluster at the center. With his quirk helping him remain calm, he looked to a large building he guessed was the hospital. The big red cross gave it away. He saw that there were a lot of robots there. Izuku shot towards the hospital and created multiple sword constructs and shot them towards the unsuspecting robots. Catching 4 of them off guard, he mentally tallied 6 points, seeing as he got 2 2-pointers and 2 1-pointers. Sensing the intruder among them, the rest of the robots converged at his position. Izuku channeled his ether to create a dome where he caught a 3-pointers. Using them much like a chain ball, he grew it at a cluster that was coming to him from his side. An explosion that gave him another 10 points, totaling him up to 14. He suddenly felt his instincts forcing him to duck, and duck he did, as not even a sec later a clawed arm was passing through where his head was. Izuku charged his fist with one for all, while ether swirled around his arms, seemingly encasing in a cushion of energy. He hit the robot hard enough for it to shoot backwards, totaling other robots unfortunate enough to get caught in its path and open up an escape route for him. His arm, while not useless, felt numb and saw that his knuckles were bleeding. His ether was already fixing the minor damage, too. Izuku used his ether and burst through before his path closed up, and not even a moment later did the remaining robots, which seemed to be around 13, to chase after him. He looked to the side and saw some of the examinees coming closer to his position. While he wanted to conserve his energy in case someone needed help or to heal an injured examinee, it seemed as though he'll have to take care of these robots first. He turned to the robots, and his body was suddenly glowing with energy. Izuku pointed his palms to the group of robots and shouted, "Heaven's Light, Blade Dance." His ether formed thin blades flew towards the robots and cleaved them straight through. Izuku let out a sigh of exertion. While powerful than most of his constructs, it took a lot out of him. As he turned around, he saw a person hunched over holding his stomach. Izuku ran to check up on him. "Hey, are you all right there?" "Huh? Who are you?" "And to answer your question, I just overused my quirk, that's all," he said with a haughty tone in a very foreign accent. "Let me see, I'll numb the pain for you." Izuku raised his arm at the person's general direction and let his ether numb the pain, which was centered around his stomach. Teacher's meeting room. Well, it seems we have a very talented generation. I see everyone having diverse techniques to help take in points, said a voice. Yes, I agree. Whether it was keeping a calm in this chaos, speed, or overwhelming strength, they are surely showing their worth, replied another. And then there is him, Izuku Midoriya, is it? His very quirk is amazing, and not to mention his tactics as well as his actions this far. I wonder why was he not recommended to UA instead of taking the exam? He surely has the caliber. I don't know how to answer that, but let's give these young ones their final test, shall we? Test area? Merci. We make a good team, me and you. Perhaps we should can't dash. Whatever he wanted to say was drowned out by an explosion that occurred in the center of the city. As the smoke cloud subsided, Izuku saw a colossal-sized green robot emerge from where the explosion happened, causing everyone to start running in fear. Izuku, on the other hand, was thinking differently. The sudden appearance of the robot may have caused injuries to the candidates. While there may have been precautions taken, nothing must be foolproof. Izuku ignored what the blonde was about to say and had already started going to the robot's area, using his ether reserves. He was met with interference from the other robots. He quickly created a lance of ether and threw it at the robots. It went through 2 of them before exploding, catching another 3 in it. He further increased the ether being channeled while making sure to have enough in reserve for him to use. He reached to a site of absolute pandemonium. People were rushing to get away from the 0-pointer. A complete lack of sense was evident. He knew he'd have to do something. Izuku gathered his aura and let it spread through the area, while simultaneously running towards people who were trapped under large pieces of concrete and helped them by lifting it off them. He used his strength to break through the incoming debris, which clearly became taxing in his body. The others stared in awe at the maelstrom of energy that encased Izuku. After saving a handful of people, Izuku looked around to see if anyone else. Izuku froze on the spot there, trapped underneath a large amount of concrete that could have possibly crushed and broken her leg. Was Uraraka, who was trying to crawl away from the now quickly approaching robot. As soon as his brain registered the scene in front of him, it was as though his body moved on autopilot. Throwing away all sense of reason and logic, Izuku forced himself beyond his limits, flooding his legs with ether, creating the mentally dubbed ether burst. It created shockwaves when he jumped towards the massive robot. The shockwaves cleared off the screen of smoke and dust. This, of course, gave the spectators a clear view of what was supposed to be unbelievable. All the while, Izuku smiled at the similarities of what happened then with Bakugo, and now his body moved on his own, lacking the ether to reduce the knockback of one for all. Not that he cared. Izuku reared his arm back and channeled the undulated power of one for all into his fist, and then he shouted out, "Smamish!" Izuku felt the impact for a brief moment, then saw the damage of what he did. The robot was breaking apart into nothing but scrap metal that was coming apart piece by piece, and it was now a few feet in the air because of how much power he used to hit the thing. Everyone was staring at the pure destructive power that he possessed with shock and awe. They didn't even bother to run away from the now scattering debris, as they didn't know how to comprehend the whole situation. Uraraka looked up in amazement at what power Izuku had before seeing that he wasn't slowing down. While everyone else in Test Site B was staring at the shattered remains of the zero-point robot, Izuku began to feel the pain hitting his body in one blow. Izuku's Quirk was working overtime to heal his arm, but knowing that surfing the fall was on the top of his to-do list, he diverted as much as power he could to create a platform beneath him. As the pain slowly faded, Izuku was able to concentrate better and was able to create a small platform beneath him, yet his descent speed was still too much. He spotted Uraraka running towards where he was going to land with a slightly awkward movement in her leg. She then jumped onto a bit of destroyed robot and gave it a touch with all 5 of her fingers, making it float, and waited for Izuku to fall to a point where she could touch him. Izuku could see what she was planning and extended his left arm toward her, and just as they were about 20 feet above the ground did their hands make contact. But a small miscalculation on Izuku's part caused him not let go of her, and one thing led to another, and he began to hover a couple feet above the floor on his platform, holding Uraraka bridal style. With his half-healed hands, of course, he couldn't feel the weight because of what he supposed was Uraraka's quirk. Our release. With that one word and a hand gesture from Uraraka, Izuku felt the weight on his, and pain shot up, but he refused to scream out. Izuku gently let Uraraka down on his platform before lowering them to the floor. Izuku turned his head with a blush on his cheeks and looked over at Uraraka, who also had a blush, and tried thanking her as she did the same, before covering her mouth and throwing up due to the weakness of her quirk. It's all over. Those 3 words filled Izuku with relief and a touch of nervousness. He was sure he got at least 45 points, and he was happy with himself for being able to save people like a true hero. Izuku felt his ether fixing his arm before he shifted to try and heal Uraraka's leg. Izuku didn't pick up on the large crowd gathering around him and talking about the power he just displayed. Holy shit, did you see that? It'd be better to ask who didn't see that. This kid must have a monstrous quirk. I mean, I still can't believe what I saw. And look, he's even able to heal other people as well. While people were still in awe over Izuku's performance, Recovery Girl made herself known as she started healing others before getting to Izuku. Izuku-chan, let me handle the rest, would you? Recovery Girl asked, which got responded with a nod from Izuku, and him holding his right arm up to her. Recovery Girl bent down slightly and puckered her lips before they extended towards Izuku's arm. The moment the two came into contact with each other, Izuku's arm was consumed with a faint green aura with a touch of gold, after which she did the same with Uraraka. As people started leaving, both Izuku and Uraraka were close to each other and went on to have small talk till the end of the bus journey, after which they promised to keep in touch after exchanging numbers. Meeting room. Wheel, I must admit that was truly fascinating. In first place, we have examine number 2234, Izuku Midoriya, scoring 54 villain points along with a whooping 80 rescue points, making him a true prodigy. Also, it's been a while since we had someone take down the zero-pointer. Not to mention the way he put others before himself, as well how he went on to rake up points while still helping others along the way. We may have the greatest generation too. In second place, we have examinee 2233 Katsuki Bikagu with 77 villain points and 10 rescue points. Not to mention the recommendation we received on some candidates, don't you think, Principal? Yes, it does. And it will be our duty to raise them the best we can. Now then, dismissed, but Toshinori-kun, please stay for a moment. As one by one the people filed out, Toshinori kept a perfect poker face. It wasn't until the last person left did a smile that threatened to split his face come out. I truly am proud to have met Izuku, and not to mention the fact he will surely be the next symbol of peace. He had the instincts better than a pro hero, and that's saying something, isn't it, Principal? I agree with you, but we must make sure he is ready for all that he will face in his life. Train him well. He will be the one leading us to a better future. With Izuku. 1 week went by after the day of the UA entrance exam, and Izuku had been a bit nervous while he was happy with what happened. All Might hadn't contacted him. The whole week was eventful. He and Uraraka spent time training at the beach or just talking to each other, which also extended to texting each other. He was happy that he found a good friend in Uraraka. He had also worked out some moves and even talked about it with her. But suddenly his mind went back to his sensei. Nothing for an entire week. I wonder why. Is he caught up in work? Or is it, oh God, did I not get in? Know that, oh God, I did in dash. Izuku's thoughts were cut off by the sound of loud approaching footsteps as his mother burst into the room, holding what seemed to be an envelope, while exclaiming, Izuku, it's here. The letter, it's really here. He didn't know how to react. Izuku stared at the letter with a completely blank expression. His mind was torn. Was he going to get in? Did he fail? As he walked towards his mother and thanked her before taking the letter from her hands. Taking a deep breath, he removed the seal and opened the letter. Suddenly, a small clinking noise echoed through the room as he and his mother saw a small metal device landed on his desk with a small light blinking on it. What is dash? Not even able to finish his sentence, the device shot up a beam of light that became a projection of All Might. Izuku shouted in disbelief as he fell backwards off his chair as the projection kept playing, while Izuku's face went from that of shock to one of trepidation. This is a projection. The holographic All Might exclaimed as he looked directly at the camera. Wait, what? I thought this was from UA. Questioning why he was seeing All Might on a recording device from UA. Now you're probably thinking, why is All Might on this? The answer is simple. I am in town to teach the next generation of heroes at UA High. That explanation alone made Izuku and Inko go wide-eyed as he now ignored the argument that went on between All Might and one of the cameramen telling him to get on with it. The holographic All Mights went down a little bit as he turned to the camera, now looking directly at Izuku. Young Midoriya, I must say, even though you aren't a student in UA, yet you already embody its motto, Go Beyond, plus Ultra. You were ranked first in the entire exam. Not only that, you made my colleagues acknowledge your strength, they called you a prodigy. You see, we had a separate system of points as well, and you, young Midoriya, had received 54 villain points and 80 rescue points. All Might boomed out at the loudest. Izuku had heard him while he just looked up in shock as happy tears began to fall. I can't believe it. Izuku tried to speak out. He was brought into a gentle hug by Inko, who was proud of her son. You've made it, young Midoriya, and you have made me proud. This will be your hero academia. Those words filled Izuku with nothing but pure, unadulterated joy. As the projection finished, Izuku couldn't help but hug his mother back. His mother simply smiled and kissed his forehead before telling him that she always believed in him. He heard his phone go off, showing that Uraraka was calling him as they both talked about how they got in, and Uraraka congratulated him on taking first place, to which he thanked her without stuttering. They both agreed to meet up in front of school before they see which class they were assigned to. UA begins. Izuku had spent his days refining his control over his quirks. All Might had told him of the many methods which would help his body adapt faster. Recover Girl had taken a liking to Izuku over the due course of when he was at the training ground and had taken over his teaching in the medical field, but he still spent time at the hospital under the doctor. He and Uraraka had formed a good bond over the month, and he was looking forward to meeting her again. The train from his home station to the UA-1 took 40 minutes. He met a few former classmates he encountered who congratulated him on getting into UA. When he reached the gates, he saw Uraraka waving at him. He waved back, and once they were near each other, Izuku and Uraraka exchanged greetings before finding out that they've been assigned to the same class. Izuku led Uraraka to the door for Class 1A as he already knew most of the layout of the school. He opened the door to find a squabble between two of his classmates. Take your feet off that desk, Tenya shouted. Izuku glanced over and sighed at the form of Katsuki, leaning back with his shoes rubbing into the desk. Your actions are insulting not only to those who have come before us, but also to the excellent craftsmen who made that desk. Katsuki snorted. Shut it. What middle school did you go to where they stuck a massive stick up your ass? I went to Sumai Academy, and my name is Ida Tenya. Sumai. Katsuki's feet fell from his desk, and he leaned forward. Get out of my face, you stuck-up elitist, before I blow you to bits. You dare threaten a fellow student? You should be expelled immediately. Katsuki snorted. His eyes drifted from Tenya, and Izuku sighed as they fell on him. So you're here too, Izuku? Uh-huh. Morning to you too, Kakin. Izuku felt everyone's eyes turn to him, and a small blush took to his face. "Good morning, my name is Ida Tinya. I hope we can get along," he said while he marched over. "Nice to meet you, Ida-kun. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I hope we get along too," I replied. "My name is Ochako Uraraka. I hope we have a nice time together," said Ochako, who introduced herself. "I must admit, Midoriya-san, to think you understood the true meaning of the test, and along with the monstrous strength you had displayed in the practical exam, had actually left me feeling lacking. Although I am curious as to why you hadn't been recommended." This got the attention of everyone, especially two students. Ida was cut off from continuing his speech by the arrival of a sleeping bag. "If you're here to socialize, then get out." A deep and bored voice spoke from behind them. Izuku looked over his shoulder to see a man in a sleeping bag with tired eyes as he maneuvered his arm and started drinking from a juice carton. The class just went silent at that before the man stood up and got out of his sleeping bag. He looked at all the students with uninterested eyes before holding out a blue tracksuit. "Take one. Go to the changing rooms down the hall, and to the left, then meet me out back. I'm also your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shoyuta. Nice to meet you," Aizawa said in a bored tone, throwing a box of the tracksuits in front of them. Izuku tried to get a baggy tracksuit, but it ended up in failure as they had their tags written on them. After changing, they all assembled in the outdoor training ground. "Today we're testing your quirks. More specifically, the limits of your quirks," Aizawa spoke in a dull tone as he was met with a little resistance. But he carried on, ignoring the complaints. "We'll be using the standard gym test you should have done in middle school as the test. Now we'll need an example of the top-scoring student." Izuku stepped forward. Aizawa stated, indicating for him to step forward. As Izuku stepped forward, he was handed a softball. "Use your quirk and throw this as hard as you can." Izuku was suddenly nervous. He knew that he could get isolated by his peers. He had been lucky to gain his quirk when he did. And if he made it look as though he was above them, Izuku would be made an outcast. And so he made up his mind and decided only augmenting his body and not use one for all or use the max of his ether. Murmurs broke out on how Izuku's practicals went, while Bakugo looked on with interest along with 4 others. Izuku stepped forward into the circle and had the ball in hand before throwing it with the help of his quirk, sending it flying through the air. Before a few seconds later, Aizawa showed on his device that he threw it 710.64 meters. This caused multiple eyes to narrow. Considering his entrance exam, Izuku sweated. Even holding back, he received this much of a score. "Okay, first event. 50-meter dash, but before that, Izuku to me," Aizawa stated while gesturing the others towards a 50-meter track. "Midoriya, care to explain to me why you are holding back? We both know what you are capable of. When you trained here at UA Underground, you were capable of destroying dummies that have withstood attacks for years. This test is for you to understand your absolute limits of your quirk, and the fact you don't want to even do that is insulting and goes against what UA stands for. Remember, go beyond, plus ultra," Aizawa said as the cloth around his neck shifted to let him see the yellow goggles around his neck. "Eraserhead. I'm sorry, I didn't dash," Izuku started, but was interrupted by Aizawa. "These people are going to be your trusted allies and comrades for 3 years and further. You've got to learn to trust them, and beyond that, they may even become your trusted friends in the long run. So grow a spine and put yourself to the limits," Aizawa stated with an annoyed sigh. "Thank you, Aizawa-sensei. I won't hold back anymore," Izuku stated. "Good, cause you'll have to redo the softball throw again. But before that." Aizawa left and started calling the students one by one. Tenya went up, joined by Ajuitsu. He saw that Tenya clocked in at 3.04 seconds. "It didn't look like you reached your top speed." 50 meters is too short for anything past third gear," Tenya grumbled. Uraraka joined them after her test, where she clocked at. "Midoriya, Bakugo, you're up," Aizawa called out. Izuku hadn't wanted to try this out before he had tested it out, but it seemed as though fate had other plans. As they readied themselves, Izuku channeled as much of one for all he could control and let it spread around his body. Once then, his magic reinforced his muscles and bones. Aizawa noted the shift in the aura around Izuku and grinned. "Ready, go." Izuku burst forward, leaving shockwaves in his trail, while Bakugo held on using his explosion quirk. But it was too late. 2.01 seconds. Everyone, including Aizawa, was shocked as Izuku crossed the line in a time that had them speechless. Aizawa had dropped the device in his hand while Izuku had to resort to using friction to stop himself, leaving a trail deep into the ground. Aizawa quickly recovered from his shock and just told them to do the grip strength test and handed them the machine, which Izuku gripped with as much strength he could muster while keeping one for all augmented by his magic, but that was more than enough to destroy the machine. This continued for all the other events wherein he had dominated most of the events with Momo and Todoroki and him exchanging the top 3 positions in most of them. The softball throw was the second to last test for Izuku as he also decided to really test his limits and flooded his hand with more magic, while keeping one for all in harmony. Doing so, of course, had unexpected effects. First, the ball reached a distance of 2.83 kilometers. Second, the backlash caused those near to him to fall onto their butts. Third, Izuku sort of destroyed half of his tracksuit. While Izuku had noticed he could control what seemed to be 5% of one for all, it seemed that it was not perfect as his arm and body was a bit numb. "Whoa, Midoriya is ripped," Kaminari said out loud, which brought Izuku to notice that his gym clothes were half ripped, exposing his arm and parts of his chest to the class, where every girl in the vicinity turned away with fierce blushes on their faces. Izuku immediately summoned his ether to create a cloak of light which he wore. This, of course, had the unintended side effect of gaining the attention of Momo. Bakugo, on the other hand, was in shock. He knew Izuku was strong, but this blew it out of proportions. He clenched his fists at how empty his past boasts must have been to Izuku. Aizawa announced that class was dismissed after showing the leaderboard to them all, showing that Izuku was on the top with Momo just underneath him. As soon as Aizawa left, he was bombarded with questions on his quirk and how he got so strong. Izuku, while used to being asked questions about his quirk, was still a bit overwhelmed by the questions of his classmates. He turned around to see that Uraraka was speaking with Momo Yaoyorozu. He answered a few more questions before he was suddenly confronted by Bakugo. Izuku sighed. He knew that it was inevitable, especially considering how long they had fought along with each other. Izuku nodded and he went to locker room, so as to get out of his gym clothes. Bakugo went alongside him, and soon enough everyone was headed to the locker rooms. "Care to explain why you never busted out those moves before?" Izuku and All Might had come up with a simple excuse for those who asked about his quirk. "My quirk is a little different from the norm. It kept mutating and kept busting my control every now and then. It was just 2 weeks before the entrance exam that it finally stopped." "You know, Izuku, that quirk of yours might be more than a little different. Well, then I'll have to pick up slack, eh? Can't just let you not have a rival, right?" And with that, Bakugo left Izuku and walked towards the classrooms. Izuku never noticed how tight Bakugo's fists were clenched. It had been a bit crazy for Izuku ever since the quirk apprehension test, with a lot of people asking him to show off his quirk, as well as him never actually being adept at social situations. Yet through it, he was able to gain a few friends, most noticeable being Uraraka, Ida, and Momo. Bakugo had also hung around then, yet he never actually took part in the conversation. Momo started talking to him while using his quirk's creation aspect as a topic. He was actually able to hold a conversation with Momo because of how similar their interests were. He wasn't surprised on how she got a recommendation to enter UA, especially after seeing her quirk in action. He also found that she was the one who had a higher grade than him on the written test. Soon they hung out a lot, after which she was regularly seen with him, Uraraka, and Ida. Now he was waiting for the heroics class to begin. After spending the morning going through the normal class, which was fun since he would compete with Momo to see who was the better student, the door was suddenly flung open and All Might arrived in his Silver Age costume. "I have come through the door like a normal person." Izuku grinned at his sensei's boisterous entrance while the rest of the class chattered with excitement as All Might strutted to the front of the room. He turned to them, grinning, and continued, "Basic hero training. This class will put you through every possible scenario and forge each and every one of you into a great hero. Today is going to be battle training. And for this you need to look good, so I have hero costumes." All of which was done in accordance to maximize your quirk's effects. Everyone stood as All Might finished. "Once you have changed, come to ground beta." As they all took their costume containers and left to the changing room. Their costumes were based on the designs given by them along with some notes. These are sent by the UA to companies so that they are made of the highest quality materials. As they walked out onto ground beta, they saw each other in their hero costume for the first time. Momo had a simplistic costume which showed off a lot of skin, Ida had a very similar costume to that of Ingenium. Ochako had a pink bodysuit which seemed to be designed after a spacesuit. Izuku, on the other hand, was seen wearing a black body armor, which consisted of a black tight and full-sleeve shirt with silver accents which outlined his muscles and a metal plate on his collar, and black pants that had two black straps on his thighs, and another two strapped around his shins separate from each other. He wears black metal-plated shoes, which appear to be attached to his trousers. To top it all, he had a white cloak which red flames licking at the end. Imagine EMYA with a white cloak. Everyone's here, and you truly look like heroes, All Might said. Now, welcome, my students, to battle training. It seemed as though ground beta was one of the test areas that were used in the entrance exam. Most of the students started to talk amongst themselves, wondering what exercise they would be given. If I may, sir, Ida began. It appears that this is the same location used for the entrance exam. Will we be performing urban tactics again? No, not twice. We'll be taking it 2 steps forward. While most of the villain fights you see on the news are outside, statistically speaking, the more serious, as well as tougher fights in our hero community occur indoors. The villains on higher scales act from the shadows in hopes of not being seen on the radar. Now I shall divide you into groups of 2, and then you shall battle against each other, where one group will act as the villains and the other as heroes. The villains have a warhead in one of these floors of the building, and in order for the heroes to win, you must either capture the villain or you must seize the warhead, while the villains need to prevent that from happening. This, of course, was met with a ton of questions from the students. All Might seemed a bit overwhelmed by the questions, but continued. We shall decide the groups and the roles by lots. Same as canon, except Momo is teamed with Izuku instead. Now Group A versus Group D. The A team will be the heroes for this simulation. The test will start in 5 minutes. With that, All Might left with the rest of the students following him. Izuku, we should make a plan, Momo said as she turned to Izuku, who looked to be in deep thought. Kaken is gonna gun for me the moment the simulation starts, so our best tactic is for me to distract him while you take Ida on. I'm sure that I'll be able to stall or even beat Kaken, but how do you think you'll fare against Ida? While I prefer we stick together, but from you have said about your school life, Bakugo would want to have a one-on-one with you. I'll take care of Ida, but make sure not to get hurt, okay? And begin. All Might's voice rang through the test area from the control room. With a nod, both Momo and Izuku entered the building, with Ida and Bakugo. For eyes. What do you think about Deku? Said Kaken with his back against Ida. You mean Midoriya-san? Well, he is very friendly. He seems to have extensive knowledge of heroes and their quirks. While at first he is a bit awkward, he'll ease into it after some time. And his quirk is very powerful and versatile. Is that enough? Replied Ida. Yeah, that sounds like Deku, all right. Stay here. I'm going after him, he stated while having a rather resigned expression on his face. Wait, Bakugo, we are supposed to work as a team, remember? If we don't, they will overpower us for sure. The pure destructive power of Midoriya's quirk is mind-boggling. Katsuki didn't bother replying. He simply walked out, determined to settle his mind on his thoughts on Izuku. With Izuku and Momo. As they both entered the building, Izuku placed his hands against the wall of the building. Momo was confused as to what he was planning as she reached out to shake him. His body suddenly released a wave of light that seemed to extend everywhere. After 10 seconds, Izuku clutched his head as if in pain. Momo was concerned about him and helped him up. After receiving a thanks from him, she asked, "What was that about?" Okay, not much time to explain. It was a bastardized version of a sonar. The feedback hurt. The weapon and Ida are on the 5th floor, and Bakugo is searching for us since I saw him on the 3rd floor stairs coming downwards. Izuku felt his headache reside a bit, but it was still present. Momo, the moment me and him start combat, I want you to gun for the warhead. Be alert, Ida is faster than you, so get your weapons ready before attacking him. Okay, I'll Kadash. Izuku. Izuku turned to see Kaken running towards him, an explosion charging up in his hands. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Momo tensing for a fight. He looked back and saw that Kaken was just a few feet away from him. Augmenting his limbs with ether, Izuku rushed to intercept Bakugo head-on. Both Momo and Bakugo are clearly surprised by the tactic. Bakugo thrust his arm, planning on nailing Izuku in the face as he released his explosion quirk again. Izuku, as if already knew his move, ducked and placed an open palm on his stomach before his energy thrust him away. Not giving him time to recover, Izuku blurred towards Bakugo and took them both to another hallway, leaving Momo a clear shot to the stairs. With Izuku and Bakugo. As both Izuku and Bakugo engaged each other in combat, with Izuku using his knowledge of close combat to keep Bakugo from using his quirk, finally meeting distance, Izuku cut Bakugo's right swing with a massive uppercut. Both of them didn't look too banged up, with Bakugo having just a few bruises, and with Izuku's clothes being a bit singed and his face having a nasty bruise when Bakugo switched moves, surprising him. Izuku had been trying to subdue Katsuki, but it seemed as though today he was a man on a mission. As they both stood up, with a couple of meters between them, Bakugo's gauntlets suddenly glowed red. Bakugo looked at Izuku, and rather than having a face of anger that Izuku anticipated, it was actually a visage of determination. You know, Izuku, back in school I always thought that the rest of them were extras, that I was undisputed. We used to hang out together, and after a while I started becoming a bit arrogant in my power. I thought everyone would just drag me down. So I challenged each and everyone there, and as I beat everyone with no sweat, you of all people gain a quirk and knock me out. You refused all my challenges after that, or someone always got in between. So let's end it here and now. Show me that you can actually give me a challenge. With that, Bakugo raised his right arm, and a pin much like that which you see on grenades became visible, as he explained that these gauntlets store up the nitroglycerin to let him create a big enough explosion. All Might tried to warn Bakugo from using it, but it was too late. A massive explosion came charging at Izuku from Bakugo's gauntlet. Those in the control room watched in horrid fascination as the explosion bathed Izuku in fire. All Might seemed to be unmoving, and before he could say a word, he saw a trace of gold coming from the smoke left behind by the attack. And soon as the smoke subsided, it gave way to see Izuku's hand outstretched with a massive shield of energy reminiscent to that of 5 petals. His arms seemed to buckle from the strain, and he was seen panting as the construct was dispersing. He looked a bit worse for the wear, but none too damaged. You know, Kakin, if you wanted me to prove that I wouldn't drag you down, you could have said so rather than trying to attack me all the time in school, but as much as I would love to patch up, I have a test to win. Heaven's Light, Swords Barrage. Multiple sword constructs flickered into creation and were all pointed towards Bakugo, who had a grin on his face. The swords came close to catching him before he revealed that he was charging another explosion in his left hand. Explosion met sword tip and knocked Izuku down from the resulting wall of air. As soon as he sat up, he found his sensory field urging him to duck, and not a moment later he found himself mere inches away from Katsuki's gauntlet. Ether shot forward from Izuku's frame and clashed with the arm, giving Izuku just a moment to stand. Both of them looked exhausted, Bakugo more than Izuku. It was then Izuku decided to end it. He sent multiple chains of light and spread them through the enclosed space as soon as Bakugo tried to combat them. All the chains suddenly dispersed, and soon he turned to find Izuku had closed the gap with his fist reared back for a haymaker. And so with a resigned sigh he took the blow. Izuku made sure to not use more 4% of one for all to augment his body, as he had found out that instead of augmenting a single limb with OFA, letting it flow throughout his body gave a better output than his previous assumptions. Izuku let out a tired sigh as he spun the capture tape around Katsuki's. He was wondering what happened to Momo when suddenly the intercom burst to life. Hero Team A wins. His radio also beeped, signaling Momo wanted to communicate with him. Izuku, are you there? I heard a large explosion. Izuku gave a small smile before he placated her worries before asking her how she won against Ida. I captured Ida by luring him into trap by blinding him with smoke after his movements were sealed with a rope trap. He was in front of the mouth of a cannon. And then I just spun the capture tape around him. Izuku's sweat dropped. Wasn't that a bit overkill? Suddenly he thought of his fight with Bakugo and felt stupid for thinking that. Control room. The entire crowd was buzzing with the students chattering about what they witnessed. The girls were talking on how Momo and Izuku used tactics to defeat Group D, while the guys were going on about the fight between Izuku and Bakugo, and how Izuku was completely badass when he blocked that grenade attack. This was what Momo and Izuku saw when they entered. Of course, Uraraka ran to them and started fussing over them and their injuries, which weren't much thanks to Izuku's healing abilities. The rest of class also talked to them, and even Bakugo, who came after visiting Recovery Girl, although he was a bit moody. All Might got the attention of the class. Now, that was a very interesting match. The hero team showed excellent response to all the hurdles they faced, And even though the villain team was divided, they all performed admirably. Although young Bakugo, I'd recommend that you don't use your gauntlet attacks and training exercises without prior permission, as it could have caused injuries to both the students. It may also harm those near as collateral damage. Bakugo, who seemed much more reserved than normal, simply nodded. Now, since that is out of the way, let's continue with the simulation. The teams went on one by one. Izuku was talking to everyone about what they saw. He also received compliments about his costume and his moves. The class ended on a high note as they all left with a smile on their face, as All Might said that he was proud of each of them. As school ended, Bakugo came up to Izuku, who was with Momo, Uraraka, and Ida. Hey Izuku. Kaken. What is it? Izuku was a bit on guard, as he wasn't sure how Kaken was going to react. Look, you proved that you were strong, so I wanted to let you know that the next time I'll win, I'll be even stronger than last time, and that we'll face each other straight on. No tricks. Got it. Izuku was stunned. He knew Bakugo long enough to understand that this was his version of friendship. With a smile, Izuku raised his arm out for a fist bump. Sure, Kaken. Let's give it our best. Bakugo seemed surprised before he returned the fist bump, smirking as he did so. Unknown to them, they were watched by All Might and Nizu. He's a natural, isn't he, Principal? Yes, to connect with Bakugo through fists. I truly believe he will be in the epicenter of everything. The next day, the entire walls around the campus was crowded with reporters trying to get into the campus. News of All Might teaching the new batch of UA had been a major scoop. Currently guarding the entrance was Aizawa and Present Mike. You think they'd give up after some time? Like sheesh, I'd rather fight a horde of villains than this. This, of course, was from Present Mike. The reporters had been hounding students and teachers alike for the better part of an hour. Until now, when one of the more gutsy reporters tried to enter the UA by force, which in turn activated the defense mechanism of the school. Class 1A. Izuku and the gang were together talking about how they have been spending the day. Uraraka was by Izuku and was recalling how she had once used her quirk to make her bag lighter so she could carry it easier, blah blah. Ida was with Baku, who had mellowed out, berating him on disrespecting the desks. Momo was on the other side of Izuku and was reading through one of his notebooks, while Izuku himself was content just listening to Uraraka's story while answering Momo's questions. The door opened to reveal their homeroom teacher, Aizawa-sensei, who had a rather bored expression on his face. Now then, I'm here to inform you of something very important. I recommend you listen well. The entire class was motionless, knowing the last time Aizawa-sensei threatened them with expulsion. You have to choose a class rep. Do it however you want. I need the name after I finish my nap. The classroom sighed in relief. Before, of course, everyone decided that they were the best to class rep, which before it could escalate, both Izuku and Ida calmed the class down. After which Ida recommended a vote, which the class agreed to. Fast forward. The vote drawn led to the result of Izuku with 4 votes and Momo with 2 votes. And thus Izuku was lead to be the class rep and Momo the vice. Izuku was a bit overwhelmed, but calmed himself and promised the class that he would do his best. During lunch, they all sat together where they found that Ida was the younger brother of the pro-hero Ingenium. Before anyone could comment, the UA security system ordered an evacuation due to a security breach. The response was immediate, but pandemonium began to wreak across the cafeteria. Izuku knew that he needed to do something. Calling his aura, he heightened his abilities to the max, causing his body to leak energy to the surroundings. This caused most of the students to calm down due to the passive effect of his energy on allies. Momo created a loudspeaker to catch everyone's attention and spoke. Please remain calm. We must first assess the threat before we do anything. Please maintain an orderly fashion. Izuku, still keeping his quirk active, created a platform for him and Momo to rise above the crowd, where they saw the supposed threat was nothing more than some rogue reporters who got in. This, of course, got everyone to settle down and return to the cafeteria, a bit on guard, but overall calm. Izuku, seeing everyone going back, deactivated his quirk and sighed. He then got compliments from his fellow students. Good thinking, Midoriya. It's a good thing we chose you and Momo as our reps, otherwise we would have looked like headless chickens on TV. Day of USJ class. They assembled in class where Aizawa had told them. For today's basic hero training, All Might, myself, and another hero will supervise. We will be preparing you for disaster relief, from fires to floods. Aizawa displayed a long card, printed with the training topic. It's rescue training. The class was excited at the change of pace. I'm not finished yet, Izawa said. He pressed a button and the wall opened, revealing their packaged costumes. You all have the option to wear your uniform or your workout clothes. Some of you have uniforms not suitable for today's training, but it's not my decision. The facility will be at his off-campus, so we'll take a bus there. I'll take questions when we arrive. Class 1A strolled out to the bus bay, all dressed in their costumes. Izuku was with Momo trying to get everyone's attention so that they could board the bus. Line up, guys. After a few attempts, the class was soon in an orderly line and boarded the bus. He followed, near the back, and sat on the sideways seats near the front, with Momo and Ida on each side and Uraraka, Hu, and Bakugu on the other. The bus turned on and departed UA for the off-campus complex for rescue training. Midoriya, why is it that when you say the names of your moves they get stronger than normal, and you seem to have get drained too? Tsuyu said after a few minutes. Oh, that a pretty good question, Azui-san. Call me Tsuyu, she responded. Yeah, come to think about it, when we saw the tapes from battle training, where your sword things, well, they seemed faster and more solid-like. Kirishima grinned and continued. And your quirk is awesome. You can do a lot with that, unlike my hardening quirk. His arms stretched out and soft skin turned into a hard, crystalline material. It's great for fighting, but it doesn't look terribly cool. Izuku, though, thought he should say something. Your hardening quirk is pretty cool, Kirishima. It's definitely a good quirk for going pro. You really think so, Midoriya? Kirishima asked. Having a strong quirk isn't all it takes to be a pro. Don't forget that you need to be popular too. Yeah, I mean your hardening quirk makes better than a lot of people close combat-wise, and you're pretty sturdy for damage too. Mine is a bit different. The words I say sorta unlock something in my quirk. It's like I'm shaping my quirk to a concept. I can do a lot more, but my quirk usually cause a lot of AoE damage, and I haven't fully mastered them. Although it's pretty strong and cool, you, Todoroki, and Bakugu are pretty much levels above us. Izuku blushed at the praise. Yeah, but Bakugu is unhinged. He'll never be popular, Tsuyu said, leaping right off of Kirishima's statement. Katsuki leapt to his feet, shouting, What did you say, frog girl? Tsuyu pointed at his reaction as if it proved her point. You know, Bakugu, Denki began. It's pretty sad that barely 2 weeks in, and we all know that your personality is worse than a backed-up sewer. LOL, I love this sentence from the anime. Stop it. All of you. We're here. Izawa called back as the bus stopped. They followed him out of the bus and into the massive complex they were parked in front of. Inside were 6 zones, each with their own hazards. The class looked around the building in awe. Looks like there are zones for floods, landslides, conflagrations, earthquakes, and more. Exactly, their mystery teacher said, joining Class 1A. I've been waiting for you guys. This facility is home to nearly every disaster and accident you can imagine. I built it myself, and I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. Or for short USJ, their mystery teacher was stocky, wearing a white space suit with a black dome and yellow boots. Or Universal Studios Japan, everyone thought. You're the space hero, 13, Izuku said as he recognized the pro hero from TV. Onto his side, Uraraka did a dance at meeting her, one of her favorite heroes. Hey 13, Izawa said. Where's All Might? I thought he was meeting us here. About that, Eraserhead. It seems he overworked himself today during his morning commute. 13 held up 3 fingers and Izuku understood what she meant. Izuku felt guilty that he hadn't been of any use to All Might since he inherited One for All. It was illogical, but he couldn't help it. That man is the height of irresponsibility, Izawa complained. He turned to his students, saying, If he isn't here, then he isn't. Let's get started. Before we do so, 13 cut in. There are some things I want to talk about before we start. As many of you know, my quirk is called Black Hole. It can consume and destroy anything. While I use it to save people in disasters, it can easily kill. I can guess there are some here that have similar abilities, dangerous, and even lethal. In our superpowered society, the usage of quirks is heavily restricted, monitored, and regulated. While it appears stable, all it takes is one mistake with a powerful quirk for many people to die, even if you plan to use it for good reasons. I've been told a little about your previous classwork using quirks. Izawa's test was meant to draw out your potential. All Might's battle training showed you how your quirks can threaten others. Today, however, you will learn how to use them to save lives. Your powers are not meant to harm others, and I hope that when you leave today, you will understand what it means to help people. Thank you for listening. As they applauded 13, Aizawa stepped forward. Now let's begin. He drifted off, looking down at the plaza between the different zones. But then a black and purple mist swirled, expanding, until a hand grabbed the side of the forming hole and a head popped through. With shaggy pale blue hair, red eyes, and a white hand covering his face. Huddle up and don't move. Aizawa shouted back at them. He ignored his students' confusion. 13. Protect the students. At this point, dozens of people, villains, were pouring through a giant, black tear in the USJ. What's going on? Is this a part of the exercise? Kirishima asked. Not at all, Aizawa said, pulling on his goggles. Those are villains. A figure emerged from the mist, formed from the same black and purple wisps. 13 and Eraserhead. Where's All Might? All Might is supposed to be here. So that was you, scum. That day the press somehow got on campus. The man with the hand stuck to his face stepped forward. Well, where is he? We've brought a lot of people so we could play together. All Might, the symbol of peace. Where is he here? His attention turned to the students standing behind Aizawa. I wonder if some dead kids will bring him here. Izuku was piecing everything together. They thought All Might was going to be here. So why would they want to face him? Suddenly it crashed in him. Were they here to kill him? Izuku activated his quirk on instinct. He knew that he needed to keep everyone safe here. He was the reason All Might couldn't make it, so he had to step up. This place is far from campus, and we're the only ones here, Shudo said. Without the sensors activating, nobody at UA knows about what's happening here. They're here to kill All Might, Izuku said, causing the rest of the students to pale. As the final villain exited the black-purple mist, it appeared to be nothing more than a brute. Its brain was exposed, it was bulky, and seemed to incapable of rational thought. But somehow Izuku's very being wanted to be as far away from it as possible. His body felt primal fear staring at them. He turned to the rest of the class. He knew that it was useless unless they escape. That possibility was out the window as he felt the lockdown procedures activating. He felt one for all and ether within him. Almost immediately he had made a choice. 13. Aizawa shouted over any potential panic. Evacuate the facility and try making contact with the school. One of the villains must be jamming the sensors in our communications. There's a good chance one of their electric types is the cause. Kaminari, try to use your signal to contact UA. Think he nodded. Sensei, you can't mean to fight them all alone, Izuku said. You can't erase all of their quirks. Your fighting style is much better suited towards erasure and a quick disabling move. Fighting so many won't. No good hero is a one-trick pony, Midoriya, Aizawa said, calm as ever. Izuku stared at his sensei. He knew that even with the years of experience and training under his sensei's belt, this fight wouldn't be one he could shrug off. Finally, he decided to trust in his sensei, but a small request first. Sensei, could you please give your hand? Aizawa looked perplexed, but considering the situation, he needed to buy them time, and Izuku can't be stubborn now without good reason. He raised his arm. Izuku aimed his arm at him, and suddenly Aizawa felt like he was in his prime, all his exhaustion from the night patrols leaving him. He stared at Izuku, astonishment clearly seen on his face. Seeing his face, Izuku simply said, Warrior's Blessing. My quirk is primarily suited for supplementary type situations like this, and I thought you would like the power up. Aizawa simply chuckled. His scarf released its tight bonds around his shoulders. 13. Protect my students. And Izuku, you never cease to surprise me. With that, he flicked his scarf out and leapt down the staircase. While Izuku wanted to help Aizawa take down the multitude of villains, he followed 13 and the others towards the exit. They were only a dozen meters from the doors when the black mist appeared before them. Terrible yellow eyes glowered from the black and purple fog. I'm sorry, but I cannot allow you to leave, it said, shocking them. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our intrusion, but we've come here to UA High to kill All Might, the symbol of peace. To fight an entire league dedicated to killing All Might. This was not how today was supposed to go. Izuku had his quirk passively activated, ready to lash out at a moment's notice. We were under the impression that All Might would be here today, the smoke villain continued. It appears the schedule was revised. That is no matter. My role remains unchanged. While 13 prepared his quirk, Katsuki and Kirishima took the initiative and jumped past the pro hero to engage the villain. They both threw a devastating punch, hitting the villain simultaneously. You seriously thought we'd stay still until you finished your monologue? Kirishima grinned as he brandished his arm. The mist villain reformed, revealing a long metal collar and a simple black and white suit beneath the smoke his body formed. That was close. Though you may be students, you are still the best of the best. 13 shouted, "Get back, you two." The villain expanded thick. Dark fog began to overtake the young heroes. "I'll send you all with my comrades," the villain said, seeing that he possessed a warping quirk. He saw some of his classmates being warped away. Izuku started his counterattack. Battle arts, exorcism. A blast of concentrated ether exploded from Izuku's body, deterring the expanding most from coming closer. Shoto, seeing his chance, reacted by sending ice spears as the villain. Retreating backwards, this gave the students breathing space. 13, seizing the opportunity, told Ida, who he noticed was a relative to Ingenium, to run and get back up. Before Ida could deny the plan, Izuku laid a hand on his shoulder. Looking at his friend's face, he saw nothing but trust in them. With a nod, Ida activated his quirk. "You must be stupid to talk about your strategy in front of the enemy." With that, he expanded again, trying to catch all of the students again, but 13 activated his quirk, immobilizing and drawing the villain in towards his quirk. Ida, seeing the chance, ran towards the door. While you may have a very strong quirk, you are a rescue hero, which means you lack battle instincts. Before anyone could move, a warp gate opened behind 13, which caused damage to his entire back. Almost immediately, the villain flew towards Ida, who was already near the door, trying to pry it open. Just as he was about to reach Ida, an ice wall blocked his path. And the moment he stopped, he was face to face with the Bakugo, who immediately aimed an explosion towards the villain's visible armor. Knowing that he couldn't risk getting caught with the blow, he warped himself to the air. And almost immediately, he was assaulted with golden swords that seemed come in from all directions. As he saw from the corner of his eye, he saw the door was forced open and his captive had escaped. He was broken from his thoughts when he was locked together with chains of light and thrown towards the forested area. With Izuku. Izuku let out a breath of relief. While it wasn't a great victory, it provided him time to group up with his classmates and hopefully heal 13. Izuku looked around and saw that he had been able to save Uraraka, Shoto, Momo, Bakugo, Mineta, Mina, and Tsu. His mind quickly flew through all the different combat possibilities, with each having a rather low success rate. He cursed himself for being a reason as to why Toshinori-sensei was incapacitated. He quickly broke his train of thought and focused on healing 13 as much as he could. Prayer of healing. Which admittedly wasn't a lot. He saw everyone group besides him. It was Momo who broke the silence. "How is he, Izuku? Can you heal him?" "Unfortunately, this is beyond what I can do. He is out of the woods, but he'll be unconscious until he can get proper treatment." Izuku went to his knees at how much energy he had used. This caused his friends to worry. It was Momo who helped him up. Shoto was the next to speak. "What's our plan now? We will have to step up to tackle the villains before they get the best of us. I believe that you should make a plan. Seeing as among all of us here, you seem to have a better tactical knowledge with a better implementation than us." If this was another time, he would have stuttered and become a nervous wreck at the praise from anyone. Now, though, he only nodded before he laid down the best idea he had. "Among all of here, I believe we should go for a split, where one of us guards 13, while 3 of us rescue or group up with the others. And the rest of us can be of use and help lighten the workload of Aizawa-sensei and incapacitate the villains until Ida is back." Mineta, who had been on the edge, suddenly broke down. "How can we possibly survive? You said that they might be able to kill All Might. We have to run Midoriya." Bakugo, of course, didn't like that and was about to roughen Mineta before Izuku's passive ability reached him, and Izuku spoke. "If there's a chance that they can beat All Might, then we have to our jobs. We have to fight, and we will win. If we don't, how can we call ourselves heroes in training?" His thoughts drifted back to memories, primarily his childhood watching All Might and their first training together. "You can be a hero." Izuku clenched his fists and turned to everyone who had determination etched onto their faces. "Momo, you'll have to guard 13. With your quirk, it should be easy. Mineta, Fu, Uraraka, gather everyone and get them to a safe place. Anywhere that's not compromised. Bakugo, Shoto will have to be the ones mowing down the villain horde." Seeing as our quirks make us most battle-oriented. I'll play as support for first contact. Bakugu, you'll be the tip of the spear. Shoto, I'm assuming that you're more proficient in your ice quirk than you fire side? To which he received a delayed nod. Okay, provide Bakugu cover fire, after which we'll join him in the front lines. Any opposition? Receiving nothing but nods from each of them, they separated, each having their communications activated. The assault team started decimating the horde of villains close to their sensei, with light spears and swords, icicle spears, and explosions. With Aizawa a few minutes earlier. As soon as he had made contact with the villain wave, he knew that this wasn't going to end well. Even if he somehow defeated the entire horde of villains, the main head was the one with hands attached to all parts of his body, who was flanked by a giant with his brains exposed. Whatever his student had done to him seriously gave him an edge over everyone, but then he was worried about the side effects to this much power. He was erasing quirks left and right. While they lacked in quality, the number of villains was meant to make him get tired rather quickly, but it seemed much slower than in comparison. His battle instincts suddenly screamed at him to move from his position, which he of course paid heed to. As not even a moment later, he saw a fist making contact with the ground which he was standing on not a second later. The bird brain-like villain seemed to possess a high level of speed and strength comparable to All Might. It turned to him again and attempted to hit him again, but Aizawa seemed to dodge them by an inch or so. Eraserhead, you're so cool. To be able to dodge Numa's hits even if barely. I hate it when heroes live up to their hype. Aizawa, on the other hand, noticed that the only reason he was actually able to dodge the blows was because he wasn't tired much, and also due to the fact that Warrior's Blessing was still active. Knowing he couldn't keep dodging forever, especially since the rest of the villains were surrounding them, he quickly jumped back farther and used his scarf to catch a villain by surprise and threw it at the giant, granting him a few more seconds. He saw from the corner of his eye that the mist villain had returned and seemed to be in a bit of pain as he saw numerous scratches on his armor. The Numu seemed to stop movement as well, suddenly returning to their side. Seeing his chance, he attempted to attack the villain, but was thwarted by the rest of the goons. Kurogyri, let's leave behind some dead kids to tarnish the symbol of peace's pride. And just when he was about to activate his quirk, Eraserhead erased it, while simultaneously using his capture tape on one of the goons. Leave the children out of this, Eraserhead bellowed. Also, the famed hero complex makes an appearance. Tell you what, I'll let you in on a secret. Meet the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered Numo, made to annihilate All Might. If you can fight through all these ways, you'll fight the boss, get it? The moment he said those words, all the villains on the front ran towards Aizawa, who, while not exhausted, wasn't at the top of his game. He ran straight towards a villain who seemed to have a quirk that made him look like a gecko, while he erased the quirk of a villain who was trying to get a pot shot at him. He spun around and kicked the gecko in the face and went into the air and used his scarf to bind another villain and threw him towards a group of shooters. Aizawa was a whirlwind of mayhem, showing the villains what happens when a pro goes serious, but then the inevitable happened. He slipped up, overextending a step caused him to miscalculate on where his scarf would go. This gave a villain who seemed to possess a flamethrower quirk to shoot at him. Aizawa knew the only way was to take it head on and hope he survived, so he closed his eyes, grit his teeth, and braced for the pain, except it never came. Instead, he heard a familiar voice scream, "Die," followed by a very familiar explosion. Opening his eyes, he saw Bakugu with his fist buried inside the stomach of the villain. Then he saw that the entire wave was being frozen while a dozen or so energy blasts hit the remaining stragglers. "Hey sensei, nap time is over. We got to smash some faces in." Aizawa turned to see Bakugu standing in front of him, knocking out villains with his quirk. "Why are you here? You were supposed to escape with 13 and bring help." The mist idiot shut off that chance when he injured 13, seeing his teacher's face go grim. 13 is out of the woods thanks to Izuku, but we were only able to get 4 eyes out, and he's using his quirk to get to UA. Wait, where's Midoriya then? He's playing support and picking off stragglers. Todoroki was providing cover fire. It's been 5 minutes, so they'll be coming down for close combat right about. Just then a villain flew above their heads, and the entire left squadron was encased in ice. Now, Izuku landed in front of Bakugu, his white cloak fluttering behind him, and then Todoroki walked up towards them, creating an ice wall which separated them from the villains. Izuku further strengthened it by creating a wall of light inside. Sensei, are you alright? Can you fight? Don't worry about me. I'm not a pro for nothing. What happened to the rest of the class? We've been separated by the villain with the warping quirk. We've sent help. They'll regroup to a safe location. And what about you three? I honestly expected better from you, Midoriya. To be prepared to throw away your life along with theirs so easily, and that too for no reason. The three of them have Aizawa a hard stare which was returned with an even more vicious one. Todoroki sighed and said, "We came of our own free will, Sensei. Midoriya is the one who made the plan, that is all." He turned to Izuku, who looked to the ground before he spoke. "We are heroes before we are students, Sensei, and we can't just let you risk your life, huh?" Aizawa stared at the three of them before sighing. "We're gonna have a talk once this is over. Now let's dash." The sudden crash at the ice wall which caused the entire structure to collapse revealed the Numu with a fist outstretched. Todoroki's eyes widened. The wall was meant to give them more time than that. Numu raised his arm to destroy their last line of defense, which was the shield. Aizawa's eyes glowed as he erased the villain's quirk, but was met with surprise when the villain cracked the shield without even slowing down. The force threw all of them a few yards back, and they crashed into the trees. The moment they regained their senses, they saw the fronts converging on their location. Todoroki and Izuku raised their arms and fired blasts of ice and energy, respectively, incapacitating the villains. "Sensei, why couldn't you erase that villain's quirk? My shield wouldn't break even to one of Bakuga's explosion. Yet that thing was able to shatter it like it was made of paper." Aizawa shot his scarf to one of the grunts who tried circling around them. "No, I'm sure I erased a quirk. Either he is physically as strong as All Might or he has multiple quirks. These guys keep on coming. Todoroki, Izuku, blow him away. Bakugo, is your grenade shot ready yet? If it is, shoot it at the Numu on my mark." Todoroki slammed his foot on the ground, causing ice to form all the way to the back. Izuku raised both his hands and shouted out, "Battle Arts, Holy Light." A ball of energy shot from his hands towards the villains and exploded at the center of their formation, which caused all of them to drop unconscious. Aizawa, seeing a chance, ran towards the supposed ringleader, and while erasing the Black Mist's quirk, the moment he did so, he was intercepted by Numu. A fist smashed to his right side, blowing him towards the left side of the ringleader. "Huh, you really thought that you could outrun Numu? He is faster, stronger, and better than All Might." Aizawa smiled through the pain. "No, it was just so that I could keep you distracted and erase that warping quirk of yours. Bakugo now." Bakugo suddenly emerged from behind Numu, his gauntlet aimed directly at Numu, who was in the path of both the other two villains. "Take this, you freak." An explosion struck true as Bakugo flew back from the recoil. Aizawa was brought to their side by Izuku's light rope and was already working on healing him. They waited with bated breath as the dust cloud settled. They saw Numu with his entire left side gone. The ringleader stared at Bakugo before laughing. "That's a pretty powerful quirk you have, but Numu has a special ability. You want to know what it is?" Their eyes drifted to Numu, whose right side was regenerating at an amazing speed. Izuku noticed that it was faster than his regeneration as well. The few remaining villains grouped up with Numu in the back. The leader turned to Aizawa, who was partially healed, and spoke. "Final round. Let's go, hero." With that, they charged. Aizawa jumped over majority of the villains and directly attacked the leader. Todoroki, on the other hand, froze any villain within proximity. Bakugo struck any of those that came close to their guards. Izuku stared at the fight in front of him. He knew that couldn't keep it up for long, so he decided to tip the scales. Heaven's Light, Prayer of Salvation. Izuku felt his reserves go down to half, yet it was worth the cost as his allies felt the spell take effect. Todoroki gave Izuku a look of respect. He felt all of his attacks becomes 2x as fast and strong. The horde of villains were soon dwindling in number. Bakugo was like a fish in water, causing havoc and destruction in the midst of the villains. He saw the look of surprise in the ringleader's face along with the mist villain, but it was then he noticed the Goliath was missing. Aizawa realized the same thing, but due to diverting his concentration, his opponent scored a hit, causing him to rocket towards the other side to where Todoroki caught him. Even though Izuku's magic tried to heal him, it was of no use as Aizawa was losing consciousness and a lot of blood. Izuku could see that he was barely hanging on. "Gee, get out of here. Yo, you guys can't take them on alone." Izuku ignored everything else and poured as much as ether he could into his next spell. Heaven's light, white art of healing, desperate prayer. A blinding light erupted from his hands to Aizawa, encasing him in magic, slowly healing him. Though he lost consciousness, he was now away from death's door. Izuku, on the other hand, felt his magic reserves drop to near zero. Huh. Seems you have a healer in your party, and it seems he is pretty high level. Good, I wouldn't like this to end so soon, especially since Kirojiri took so much time rounding up the kids. Izuku and Todoroki's eyes widened, while Bakuga's narrowed. And as soon as he finished saying those words, a warp gate opened to the right of all of them, and out came all of their classmates. Most were unconscious, and they looked as though they had fought back. Then he saw Momo and Uraraka come out with a partially healed 13. It seemed as though they were the most injured. Momo and Uraraka must have put up an even more violent fight, seeing as they looked to have the most injuries save for 13. Izuku had to restrain himself from rushing over to them. Kirojiri appeared behind the villain leader. His armor was broken in a few places, and his eyes glowing with irritation. Some of these kids should know when to give up. Those little twerps were putting up such a fight. Shigaraki, why are we wasting time? Just kill them with your disintegration and be done with it. If the pros get here, we won't be able to escape without casualties. You worry too much, Kirojiri. Remember that we've set enough distractions around the city in case something like this happened. Sensei was right in doing so too. I found an interesting group of enemy players. Izuku knew that in this situation it was next to hopeless. Their teachers were out of commission, their friends held hostage, and both Todoroki and Kaken along with himself were on their last legs. He watched the two villains interact with each other. He could do nothing as his exhaustion was keeping him from moving. Nomu, kill those boys. With a healer out of commission, it should be easy enough for you. And make sure it's slow and painful. A shrill sound escaped the mouth of the beast as it slowly walked towards the three of them. Izuku's body filled with dread. There was no way that they could win. Even distractions wouldn't work on it, seeing if it is comparable to All Might. Then it could crush them all in a single blow. Todoroki did not seem to share Izuku's idea though, as a large amount of ice rushed towards Nomu, who dodged back and continued evading as the ice followed him. Izuku, it would be best for you to recover while we deal with the villain. Take Aizawa-sensei towards the rest of them. I'll provide cover for you. Bakuga makes sure he reaches there. Bakuga scowled before giving a reluctant nod. Izuku carried him towards the rest of the class, who were slowly waking up. Todoroki summoned 3 walls of ice to cover them from the enemy, although he was worried at how long he could hold out until the villain decided to get serious. As Izuku reached the class, he laid Aizawa near 13 and turned to Uraraka and Momo. They stared at him, fear clear in their eyes. Izuku couldn't blame them. The villains had thought about this attack very clearly. The distractions must be simultaneous attacks on the city. Izuku knew that there was nothing they could do, yet as he saw Todoroki and Kaken give it their all against the remaining villains, he couldn't help but feel lacking. They were giving it their all to keep them safe, while he was here licking his wounds. While he knew that he couldn't do anything, especially after using the last of his energy. Except, Izuku wouldn't take a back seat. He looked to the rest of those awake and gave a smile much like the ones All Might would give. It's gonna be all right. And with that, Izuku turned and stared at the villains, and then he channeled one for all to every part of his body. He could feel his body protest. He could feel it tearing itself apart. He could feel the undiluted power flowing within. This was what All Might had entrusted him. This was hope. And then he disappeared. Not a moment later, a bunch of villains were sent flying away. Bakuga turned to the direction they came from and saw Izuku, fist outstretched. Todoroki, freeze the entire place now. Kaken aimed the grenade shot at Big and Ugly. Both nodded. Another wave of ice covered the entire ground the villains were standing on. Bakuga took off the second pin, and the shot went exploding towards the beast. Izuku went and aimed his fist directly at Kirojiri, who had been trying to warp away the explosion with no success. The bones in Izuku's body were strained at the backlash of the punch, yet they held on. He could feel his control slipping. After each movement, he could feel more of OFA leaking into his body. But before the dust settled down, he heard a scream. A very familiar voice screamed out in pain. Izuku snapped his head, saw Bakuga on the floor unconscious, and Todoroki trying to fend off the beast from finishing off the job. Izuku rushed towards them and channeled one for all to his fist and threw his entire weight onto the punch. Meteor smash. The punch struck true, but the beast didn't fly away, nor did it even flinch. Izuku stared at the monster in front of him. The beast raised his arm, and before he knew it, Izuku's body had already moved to try and protect Todoroki. The force behind the hit had sent them flying away, and they crashed into the fountain. Todoroki forced his body to move, and he could feel the anger bubbling within him. He had seen that in the last moment that Izuku had protected him. He saw that even in Izuku's condition, he was still conscious. That was forcing his body. Todoroki laid Izuku down and said, "Don't worry, Midoriya. I'll protect them as you did for me, even if it costs me everything." Izuku's eyes followed Todoroki, his mouth trying to choke out words, almost as to stop him. It was futile before he saw Todoroki walking towards his classmates, the ice on his body slowly evaporating before a small flame lighted on his left. "That was very impressive, hitting Numu the way you did, and with his smash too. You must be a fan of All Might. Well then, playtime is over. Numu, kill the pros." Shiragaraki shouted out. The beast said nothing and simply started walking towards Aizawa and 13. Izuku's classmates stared in fear, but then Todoroki stood in his path, after which Momo ran in front of everyone and stood their hands outstretched as if to shield the teachers. Uraraka did the same, and slowly everyone did the was halfway through the distance between them before Shiragaraki halted him. Don't you know you'll be killed trying to stop Numu? Do you want to die that eagerly? Fine then, Numu. Destroy them." The beast let out a roar and charged. Izuku stared in despair, forcing himself to move. "SSD-," he whispered, forcing his mangled body to work. "STO, stop," he croaked out, yet it fell on deaf ears. He had to fight. A twitch of his arm. "For my sensei." Ether flowed out from his being, its color darkening. "For my friends." He then turned to his classmates. Then his eyes focused on the tears both Momo and Uraraka were shedding. Then something broke inside of him. And then, the mental locks on his power broke. The entire building was flooded with a golden light. Everyone turned to where the light was originating. There they saw Izuku, his body standing completely enveloped in gold with red lightning like accents throughout his body. His eyes shifted from their normal green to an otherworldly gold. And Kindu, spiked chains of light coming from all directions, caught the running beast and bound him to the ground a few feet away from the students. Power was oozing from his being. Shiragaraki looked in fear and started scratching his neck in a panicked manner. "What is that? Why, you cheater?" Izuku ignored the villain's screeching. Instead, he walked towards his classmate's palm outstretched, while some of the students tensed. Momo and Uraraka stood in awe and complete trust. Heaven's blessing, divine barrier of gods. They were encased in a massive barrier about as thick as Yue's walls. Izuku stared at the bound villain who had broken out of some chains, quickly summoning 2 ropes of light. He brought Todoroki and Bakugo inside the barrier. Before raising his arm at the villain. Battle arts, downpour of heavenly swords. They outshone the light of the long, distant suns. They gleamed in its darkness. Swords floated in the sky above them, held up by invisible hands. And then he let his arm descend, and coming down with it, the swords, all onto one target. A scream tore from the beast as it was assaulted without restraint. The rest of the swords struck the villains in the legs, whereas Shiragaraki and Kurogiri continued dodging the numerous blades. Izuku channeled energy into the palm of his hand. Battle arts, holy wrath. In the palm of his hands, shining like a second sun, shot towards the villain, engulfing it completely in a holy aura. And once it died down, they saw the villain, its healing almost completely stopped. It lost half of his left arm and all of its right arm. Izuku stared at the villain. Then he clenched his hand. "I shall become the embodiment of all that is good in the eternal world. I shall become the sword and shield of humanity." The students felt the words reverberate through them like the ringing of a bell. Those words, they felt heavy, magical. So much so that everyone awoke to the scene of Izuku, channeling all of his power into his fist, which shone with the intensity of 1,000 suns. And then he flickered to the beast and finished. War God strike. There was a violent implosion. The light shone brighter than ever before. With the entirety of his power forged into a single punch, he tore Numu right in the chest with a devastating uppercut, which sent the black monstrosity flying, hitting the ceiling, which it tore through like paper and beyond the USJ. Shiragaraki, stared at the figure of Izuku who simply stood there, his body no longer glowing. It was clear that he was unconscious, yet he refused to fall down. This, this monster had beaten Numu. Without any rational thought, he ran towards him. He was intercepted by a spear of ice, followed by even more ice constructs. He saw that the son of Endeavor stood in front of Izuku while the rest followed suit. He growled at them before he heard the main doors smashed apart. A tall figure, muscular and blonde, emerged from the ensuing cloud of dust, and then a gunshot tore through the USJ. The bullet hit Shigaraki's hand. The pro-heroes stood, a bit roughed up, and all of them had rage in their visages. The most fear-inducing was All Might, staring at the form of Izuku in his classmates' arms unmoving. Then he stared at the villains, but before he could even move, Hirojiri warped himself in front of the injured Shigaraki and warped away. Their plan a failure, and their weapon lost. As the pros watched the leaders of the invasion warped away, they grit their teeth in frustration. They looked around the USJ and found it to be much like a battlefield. Villains decorated the floor, deep trenches left behind by blasts. Ice structures were spotted in different places. But what caught their eyes was the hole on the roof, which meant that the thing hurtling away when they came here broke through the roof of the USJ, which was thick enough to withstand a small bomb dropping on it. They divided themselves into groups and rushed to the kids to see if any were injured. A burst of wind alerted them that All Might was now near his students along with Recovery Girl. The scene All Might reached to was one filled with dread. Izuku had his head on Uraraka's lap, and Momo was trying and failing to wake him up. All of the kids had tears in their eyes, while Aizawa looked on in a mix of pride and horror. Recovery Girl walked forward. The students parted to give her space, each of them pleading her to help. She stopped in front of Izuku where the girls with tears in their eyes let Izuku's head softly onto a pillow Momo had created. As she looked at Izuku's form, she assessed the damage. His entire hero suit was barely hanging together. The cloak was reduced to a few pieces of cloth stuck to his left shoulder. The body armor was reduced to just covering a bit of his chest. As for injuries, his right arm was broken. Entire body seemed to be damaged from the inside, which meant he channeled a staggering of his full power without any restraint through his entire body. And then it seemed as though his skin was burnt. Actually, now that she thought about it, it seemed as though he completely depleted himself or any energy, which meant his healing factor was completely negated. Recovery Girl knew what she had to do. She turned to the students and asked, "While I don't know what he's done to himself, I can heal him up, but he lacks any energy or stamina inside him. My quirk would kill him in this condition. Now I ask that one of you volunteer to become a battery for me to heal Izuku. There will be a risk of overdoing it, so please choose wisely." Whatever she expected, it certainly wasn't all the kids jumping to offer what little energy had to help save Izuku. She smiled before telling them to put a hand on her shoulder and do the same until the end. Momo and Uraraka shot to both of Recovery Girl's shoulder, and the rest rushed over and did the same on theirs. Recovery Girl channeled the combined energy towards Izuku and saw that he became healed. His bones mended back, the skin flaked up and fell off, revealing new pinkish skin, and then she diverted the energy to his entire body, letting it soak up within him, causing his quirk to latch on and activate so as to help Izuku. This went on until Izuku simply looked asleep and not like a dead man. Recovery Girl cut off the connection and told the kids they could let go, which they did, although some of them immediately went to their knees as it must have taken a lot out of them. Time skip, 6 days later. Toshinori stared at the form of Izuku. While he was healed physically, it seemed as though it would take some time for him to wake up. All the other kids only had some cuts and bruises. The only other threatening injury was 13, and he too would soon recover, as it seemed Izuku had done some healing immediately after 13 was struck, and along with Aizawa and Bakugo. Aizawa had a checkup and found that he was mostly alright other than some bruising in his ribs, which of course he refused to believe as he was struck by the Numu and was almost sure his entire chest collapsed. A fight almost broke off until the partly injured Todoroki explained on how Izuku used his remaining energy to heal him. This of course made both the doctors and the heroes wide-eyed, as seeing that even Recovery Girl would need the stamina of at least 20 people to get Aizawa healed. Before anyone could ridicule Todoroki's claims, Recovery Girl herself stated that Izuku was indeed capable of such feats, as his work in the hospital when he was a kid testified to those claims. Aizawa didn't say a word after that, and just simply went out, but visiting every 6 hours or so to check up on Izuku. It was the first time Tashinori had seen Aizawa anything like this. Todoroki and Bakugo were fine other than a few broken bones which were fixed by Recovery Girl. They did express concern over Izuku in their own way, which was basically inquiring where he is and asked to be notified when he was awake. His mom was informed of what happened and she came rushing to the hospital, frantic to see her son. Those first wails had haunted Tashinori ever since. He had told that Izuku did what had to because of his absence during their class. Yet, to his surprise, Inko had said that Izuku wouldn't want her to blame anyone, that if anyone was in need of saving, Izuku wouldn't even hesitate to put himself in harm's way. After that, she left, leaving a stunned Tashinori. Then, of course, were his most frequent visitors, his classmates, and at the top were Momo and Uraraka, who spent any time they had in the hospital. It seemed as though he was already a heartthrob. Tashinori half-heartedly joked to himself. He thought about the accounts he had heard from the students when questioned about the incident. While most of them were separated at the beginning, it seemed Izuku had taken command of the remaining students and had them rescue the other students while he, Bakugo, and Todoroki assisted Aizawa. Then, of course, after Izuku proved his worth, things went downhill. The villain with the warping quirk, Kirojiri, he remembered, captured all of them and was about to slaughter them before Izuku truly went beyond his limits. From what Izuku's friends had said, he was on his last legs from defending them along with Todoroki and Bakugo, but then he was suddenly covered in red lighting. He knew from that account that after all of his ether was depleted, Izuku had channeled pure OFA throughout his body. Then he learnt that, after which he proceeded to decimate the villain who he heard was built to from the ground up to destroy him. This, of course, had froze the blood of all who heard it. It also served to increase the respect towards Izuku, with most of the pros leaving get well cards, as well as keep an eye out for him. Tashinori had never been more proud at Izuku than he had right now, but truthfully, he wished none of this ever happened. He wished that the villains never attacked. He wished they didn't have decoy attacks on the city, so that their path to UA would be more time-consuming. Most of all, he wished that Izuku was awake. He had never felt so much fear as to what he felt when he saw Izuku in such a state as he was in when they reached the USJ. Recovery Girl explained that Izuku had forcefully removed any instinctual barrier he had placed on his quirks, but this had caused his body to act only to subconscious commands. Of course, he was only partially successful at this, but the fact that he once again blew them all away and saved the lives of his teachers and students filled him with pride. Nezu himself asked to notified when Izuku woke so that he could thank Izuku personally. He has proven himself in the eyes of so many people. The academy had given a few days off after the incident, but told the students to keep it under wraps so as to not incite panic to the public. But even after this, they had asked about Izuku's condition. Tashinori should not have been surprised. They said that even though Izuku was in his berserker state, the first thing he did was keep them safe with a barrier. He had truly surpassed anything Tashinori had hoped he would be. He was cut off from his thoughts when he saw movement at Izuku's bed. Izuku woke up to a white-tiled roof, the smell of disinfectant, and also the sight of his sensei looking at him through tears and shock and pride. He to speak only to find that his throat was parched beyond measure. Tashinori, sensing his discomfort, handed the boy some water, which Izuku drank in large gulps. "Sensei, why are you here? And where are we?" Tashinori stared at Izuku, noticing that his eyes seemed to have a change in color, as his eyes were now a molten gold instead of the normal green. He shook himself and asked in a rather fatherly tone, which he will refuse to admit, "FYI. Izuku, what's the last thing you can remember?" Izuku blinked at the question and turned his head to the side before actually thinking about it. "Well, we were going to the USJ and met third. The villains. Sensei, is everyone all right? The villain Nomu?" Before Izuku could short-circuit, Tashinori calmed him down and explained the situation as delicately as he could. After half an hour of explaining the story, as well as convincing him that everyone was all right, Izuku rested his head on his hands and let out a sigh. "Thank God that everyone is safe. Izuku, it was you who did that. You kept all the students safe. You were able to do a hero's work. You were able to reach out to everyone. Your classmates look to you as a hero. You even have the respect of many pro heroes. You have truly surpassed all my expectations. You've made me proud." Izuku's eyes shone with tears to think that he was able to do all that. He was so happy. The door opened and came in Recovery Girl, who as soon as saw Izuku awake, sighed a breath of relief before walking up to him with a grandmotherly smile before speaking. Izuku-chan, are you all right? Receiving a nod, she continued asking questions on how she felt before. Now, would you mind telling me what you were thinking when you put your body beyond safe limits? Izuku was suddenly aware of how menacing Recovery Girl could look when she wanted to. Well, it's just that they looked scared and that they needed some help, you know? Recovery Girl gave him a look that said that this wasn't over. Well, let me explain what you did. You ripped out some of the restraints your body keeps so that you don't explode from all the power that's inside of you. And in doing so made some unexpected changes. It seems as though One for All had evolved so that you can use it better. It can now augment not only your physique, but now your ether. And there is a matter on what happened to your body when that happened. It seemed as though your body released so much potent energy that it literally burnt your skin off. And due to your healing, you were literally in a cycle of causing damage to your body and healing it. This, of course, made problems. You were literally empty of energy. It was thanks to your classmates that there are no permanent damages. They lent me their stamina so that I could heal you. Now I recommend that you do not overexert yourself for the next few days, even though you're physically in perfect condition. Also, your new eye color suits you. Izuku, thanked Recovery Girl, who left to inform the principal, was suddenly thinking on two things she said. First, he was all right only thanks to his classmates. This, of course, caused a warm feeling to envelop his heart. Second, what change in eye color? He found out when he was handed a mirror by his sensei. Instead of the green eyes he was accustomed to, it was now a molten gold. He suddenly noticed the numerous "Get Well Soon" cards on the desk, some from his classmates, and the rest were heroes. This, of course, caused him much happiness. The principal entered the room with Izawa on tow. He clumsily bowed his head in respect, but the principal waved it off. Now, Midoriya-kun, I must admit you truly have a heart of gold. We saw your state after the incident and heard accounts of what happened. And you see, most of them were centered on you. In such a dangerous situation, you were able to rise above the rest and took the bull by the horns. I dare say that if you weren't there, the villains would have won. And then there is one part of the entire thing that happened that truly struck me. You see, at the end, even after you expended all your energy, the beast was able to overpower you. But then you did something incredible. You see, in the face of danger, you displayed the most important aspect of a hero. The principal stared into Izuku's eyes. Because what else defines a hero than self-sacrifice? The principal walked to the door and turned before he bowed, shocking all three of them. So I thank you, Midoriya, for saving my students' lives, even though you are one yourself. I hope you get well soon. The door closed, leaving the three people behind, stunned. Izawa was the first to snap out of it. He coughed into his hand, grabbing their attention. Midoriya, Izuku, what you did was not only incredibly reckless. Izuku recoiled at Izawa's tone before Izawa sighed. But also very heroic. You saved not only the students' lives, but you saved mine. I was pretty sure that would have been my last fight. But you in the middle of the battle healed me to an extent that no one would believe unless they were there to see it. So, thank you, Izuku. I believe you have the most potential I have ever seen. With a nod to both of them, Izawa left. Toshinori was giddy right now. Well then, Izuku, it seems you have earned Izawa's respect. Congratulations. Now, you should get your rest. Classes start the day after, and I'm sure your mother would love to have you home tomorrow. 2 days later. Izuku sat in class surrounded by his classmates, who were asking so many questions at once that he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. He thought about the things that happened over the past 2 days. The moment he reached home, his mother hugged him so hard that he thought that she also had One for All, and then proceeded to bawl out and berate him for not thinking of his mother when he went and risked his life. Then a few hours later, around noon, he received calls from Ida, Momo, and Uraraka. While he was able to quell Ida's worries, it wasn't so simple to get the girls to believe him. And then he spent the next 2 hours hearing the girls scolding him through their tears, after which they demanded that they spend time together after school, which he agreed to, not wanting to incur their wrath again. Then, the moment he entered the academy, he was the subject to many whispers, and then it was mayhem when he entered the class, as all of his classmates were waiting for him to enter. Which led to the current predicament. It was only when Ida came in and demanded that he not feel suffocated did Izuku finally get breathing space. After receiving a chorus of apologies, an awkward silence took place. Fumikage was the first to break it. First of all, I guess this is common for all of us. Thank you for protecting us, Midoriya. You too, Todoroki Baku. If you guys weren't there, we would have been finished. Kirishima took the initiative and asked the next question. Midoriya, what actually happened at the end? I mean, we were prepared to be the final line of defense against that thing, and then suddenly you go beast mode and send that guy flying away like the finishing move in a video game. The entire class nodded in agreement. Izuku broke out in sweat, not knowing how to answer that question. But then he remembered how that they were the reason that he was still alive, so he decided to tell them as much as he could without breaking his promise to All Might. At the end, everyone was looking at him awe, while Bakugo and Todoroki looked in respect, but the rest of them did. They heard the door open to show their homeroom teacher in all his glory. After a short speech on how proud he was on how each of them handled themselves, he went into business, which was the UA Sports Festival, which due to obvious reasons was scheduled a month and a half later rather than at the end of this month as planned. He went on to explain that they should take this opportunity to train as much as possible. Should we really be having the sports festival? I mean, especially after that attack? Mineta of course asked, scared out of his mind. The UA Sports Festival is crucial for anyone who plans to go pro, 1 chance a year and 3 chances in all. The eyes of the world will be on UA, and as such many will be watching you. This is the chance for you kids to get scouted by the pros. Momo further explained the importance of making an impact on the pros if they wanted to go above the level of sidekicks, which most people won't qualify for. Now, class is dismissed. With that, the entire class started discussing their plans for the month, as well as the preparation for UA. Momo, Uraraka, and Ida were with Izuku planning on where they should go after school. Then as soon as it was lunchtime, Izuku was hauled away by All Might to the teacher's lounge. Sensei, why are we here? A confused Midoriya asked Tashinori, who was preparing tea. Izuku, the sports festival coming up will be your official debut to the world. You already have a name for yourself among the higher-ups. Your entrance scores were the highest we had in generations, and there is the fact that you were able to defeat that Numa guy. This will be your perfect launch pad to being the next symbol of peace. Tashinori stared at Izuku with determination. The villains have realized that my time as the symbol of peace is coming to an end. Not today or tomorrow, but in the near future. That means you must be prepared to take up my mantle. You have already exceeded any expectations I had of you in the past months. You have all that it takes to be a better symbol than I ever could. And the sports festival is the prime opportunity to do so. Those who know of what you've accomplished will be watching you closely, including many of the elite. Izuku's eyes bulged out at the claim. Every evening meet me where we used to train starting tonight. It's my goal to see you that you are ready for the sports festival. And even beyond that, your main rivals will of course be young Bakugo and Todoroki. As Class 1A packed to go home, they heard sounds of something akin to a mob beyond their door. They all stared at the door, curious. Izuku, having an idea on what was happening, opened the door, and like he expected, a large crowd was gathered, their phones out and eyes focused. Bakugo came to his side. Get out of my way, extras, Bakugo shouted. If you're hoping to scope out the competition, go somewhere else. You won't learn shit from us. The crowd grumbled, yet stayed still. While it's true that most of them came to get a look, a tall boy near the back said. He made his way forward. You're humble, for a kid in the hero course. Izuku, sensing the tension, decided to defuse the situation. I'm sorry, but while it's strategic to scout the competition, you are blocking our way. And who are you? It was Kaminari who answered. That's our class rep you're talking to. The other teen raised an eye. Oh, so you're Midoriya, Izuku, huh? You don't look like much. This, of course, sent the crowd into murmurs. Kirishima walked forward, preparing to give him a smackdown before he was interrupted by Bakugo. You should put your money where your mouth is. The teen scoffed before turning his back to them. Well, I should say this. While they were merely scouting the competition, I'm here to give you a declaration of war. So you better bring your A game to the festival. Looks like the sports festival is going to be fun, Bakugo said. If everyone's aiming for the top, then I'll just have to prove that I'm better than all of you. It had been a week since Izuku's training had begun for the UA Sports Festival. All Might had taken it upon himself to make sure he would be prepared for anything that he would face. He had also tested how much Izuku could do when pushed to the limits. The spar between them was one to see. Izuku, while losing, had made All Might work up a sweat until he decided to get serious, and then proceeded to beat Izuku to the ground. Well, they were able to find out Izuku could control about 15% of One for All, which is a staggering increase from the 5% he could a month back. They also found that his ether had upped his body to handle the damage he endured almost regularly. He also began to work One for All into this magic, which seemed to act like an amplifier to what he could do. All Might had given him a day off since he said he had to meet up with someone who could teach Izuku better than he ever could. Of course, Izuku had argued saying that he was at the level he was only because of Tashinori, which of course had made Tashinori proud that his student thought so much of him. And so we find Izuku, Momo, Uraraka, and Ida at the local burger place. You know, Izuku, I'm pretty sure you don't even have to train. You could fight us all off with one hand tied behind your back. Uraraka grumbled. Momo and Ida seemed to agree with her, which sent Izuku to chuckle a bit awkwardly. Yeah, Izuku, I mean the only challenge you have are maybe Todoroki and Bakugo. Even then I'm pretty sure that you could still win. Momo said. Yes, I agree with what they say, Midoriya. You three are leagues above where we are. Ida added his 2 cents. Izuku's sweat dropped at how they had placed him on such a big pedestal. He looked at the 3 who had become his best friends. With a nod, he promised himself to make sure that he helped them as much as he could. You know, guys, the reason I'm this strong is because I know the best ways to use my quirk and maximize my capabilities with it. Once he had their attention, he turned to Ida. Ida, your quirk is Engine, which gives you super speed. So my advice is to develop a fighting style revolving around using your speed to overwhelm your opponent with your speed, and by scoring well-timed hits, or a fighting style, which uses your speed to evade all of your opponent's strikes, and then when he is exhausted, finish him off. And you could increase the damage of your strikes by timing the activation of your quirk so that your kicks would literally hit at unblockable speeds. Ida seemed stupefied that Izuku gave him such good advice, especially when this could be used against Izuku himself. Uraraka, your quirk is special mostly because if your limit, which seems to be 3 tons, is crossed, you could potentially be able to lift anything. And I'd say that if you practice hand-to-hand combat along with increasing your speed so that you could touch someone faster to activate your quirk. There is also the fact that you could use the weightlessness of the objects like ammo to throw at your opponent. Speed will get you far, and I'm pretty sure that you're very flexible, so why not parkour? Uraraka listened in rapt attention to every word Izuku spoke and ended up blushing a bit at the end, which went unnoticed by the boys, but not by Momo, who puffed her cheeks a bit. Momo, your quirk is much more complex than my quirk's construct aspect. You are pretty much capable of a lot of things. You ranked just below me in the quirk apprehension test, which means you are pretty much perfect physically and you are the smartest person in class. I'd recommend fighting with weapons. Swords, particularly dual wielding, might suit you. I know that you are proficient with a bow staff too. The best thing you should do is push past your physical limits. Practice reducing the time it takes for you to create anything, and my best advice for you is this. If you ever come across an opponent you can't beat, imagine a weapon that can. FSN reference. Keep that in mind, and I'm sure you'll do great. Momo noted every point Izuku told her, blushing whenever he complimented her, which of course only caught Uraraka's attention as the boys continued to remain oblivious. It was only when Izuku finally finished did he notice the looks he was getting from his companions. Izuku sweat a bit as he saw their piercing gazes. Ida was the first to speak up. To think that you would be able to formulate such helpful advice for us without us even telling you about our training or quirks, and to deduce the best mode to progress our training. Truly, Izuku, you are a great tactician and an even greater friend. At the end of his statement, Ida had anime tears coming out of his eyes. Momo and Uraraka simply looked at him with a blush and sputtered out their thanks. Izuku, oblivious to their dilemma, simply left it at that, before telling them that they were friends and friends look out for each other. They then agreed that there would be no more talks of training for the rest of the day, and they will use this day to have fun before having to throw themselves into training. They finished their lunch before going to the arcade, where they challenged each other in games, where they found Ida to be great at dancing, and they also found Momo was as good a marksman as Izuku, and Uraraka, having quite a good reflex too. They continued to go to places such as the park, simply enjoying the day without having any worries. Soon it was about to be nighttime, and time for them to depart. Ida left to his family's office, which was nearby. Momo said that she was getting picked up by her driver and suggested that she could drop them, which was politely declined by both Uraraka and Izuku. As the car came to the park entrance, Momo bid goodbye to both of them and walked a few steps before turning around and giving Izuku a hug and running to the car sputtering. Izuku, of course, was surprised by the gesture and thinking nothing of it hugged her back. And of course Uraraka was giving a death glare at the retreating car while gritting her teeth while cursing about having the first move taken from her. As they both walked in silence to Uraraka's house, where halfway through Izuku asked her on why she wanted to be a hero. She responded a bit shamefully that she wanted to be a hero so that she could get rich and let her parents lead an easy life, as she explained the situation to Izuku, instead of a disapproving look she expected to receive. Izuku told her that her goal was noble no matter what anyone said, and that among all of them he felt that she was the most grounded. They stood in front of her apartment with Izuku, giving her a bright smile. Izuku was then subjected to another scenario where Uraraka hugged him and ran towards her home, yelling that she was happy that he believed in her. Training ground 2 weeks later. Two blurs were seen in the underground training ground at UA, engaged in close combat. Then suddenly the larger blur was bathed in gold and overpowered the smaller blur. That is until it suddenly vanished from view and appeared behind the golden one. A kick to back of the larger one sent it flying towards the walls where it crashed into it. But before the smoke could settle, there was a burst of red and gold before the blur was in front of a short old man wearing an old superhero costume. With another bout of combat, it was the now he who was the one sent flying, but was back into the fight without even stopping. Toshinori watched on as his mentor duked it out with his student. While Izuku had the upper hand against his mentor physically, Gran Torino's quick thinking and experience gave Izuku a very hard time. He introduced them 2 weeks ago for the sole purpose of Izuku getting a challenge as well as for him to gain experience with a sparring partner who was an All Might. It worked out pretty well. By Torino's prediction, Izuku should be able to reach 25% before the UA Sports Festival. There was one last collision and Toshinori's old mentor was tossed back. Izuku stood in the middle of the ground, wearing a sleeveless version of his hero costume, archer's clothes from Fate minus the Shroud of Martin. He was breathing heavily and had a few bruises which were fast healing. He walked up to Gran Torino and initiated his healing abilities, his golden color eyes gaining a bit more shine in them. "You picked a good apprentice, Toshinori," Torino said, relishing the feeling his non-aching back. "Fighting him is giving me a good chance to work these muscles. He's a genius at this. He also has an instinctual control over One for All now, which is good, and not to mention his other quirk. Ever since that first beatdown I gave him, he's kept on improving." Izuku walked up to both of them, his eyes returning to their usual molten gold. While exhausted, he had a smile on his face. "Sensei, how'd I do?" "You reminded me of myself, Izuku, but you are more capable than what I could ever do," Toshinori said. "You were able to give my sensei a run for his money, which means you should have a great chance in the festival. But your power won't help you if you get overconfident and underestimate your opponents. And not to mention that you have to keep an eye out for any villains that may attack you at your weakest," Gran Torino said. "I'd say you're ready right now and there's still a week left, but keep the other mode as a last resort. While it does make you more powerful, the resemblance to your other transformation at the USJ would cause too much problems." "I agree," Toshinori said. "Keep to the moves you've remastered and your new ones, especially that air jump and speed skill. And most importantly, make sure you have fun." "I'll make you proud, All Might," Izuku said, his eyes glowing with determination. "Well then, Izuku, I think it's time we made the finishing touches on your entire move set and your fighting style, shouldn't we?" With that, Toshinori turned into his All Might form and jumped to the middle of the ground, getting Izuku to do the same. Izuku grinned as he closed his eyes, and the moment he opened them, the color was now a bright gold filled with power. "Let's go, Wild Sensei." In a burst of magic, he already covered half the distance between them, hand outstretched. Time skip, night before festival. Izuku let out a sigh as he rested on the couch. He had been told to rest for the day so as to be at his best tomorrow. He had talked to his friends, and they all have him good news as they said they had improved leaps and bounds compared to their level a month ago. They had also made a lot of breakthroughs that each promised would surprise him. Izuku had also told them that his training was fruitful as well. They had agreed to meet up at the stadium together so that they could have a familiar face to calm their nerves. Izuku thought about the competition. In the hero course was mix of diverse and powerful quirks. In his research on the past UA festivals, it always followed the same structure. A qualifier, a team event, and then one-on-one fights. The qualifiers are basically an every man for himself event, which would mean that everyone would be put against each other. In the team event, he had already told his friends if they were willing to team up with him. This of course got Momo scolding him about how that they would always have Izuku's back. Ida and Uraraka agreed too, and the one-on-ones were pretty self-explanatory. Izuku stared at the ceiling, listening to some music so as to distract him from all the pressure. UA Stadium. The sports festival stadium, resembling the old Olympic Stadium in pretty much every detail, was built to house over 1,000 spectators. While the third-year competition is traditionally the most popular, the USJ attack had drawn the public's attention to the first-year competition. It has also caused an increase in security, including a higher number of pro heroes in attendance than usual. Izuku leaned back in his chair, watching his classmates trying to keep themselves busy. In fact, even his friends were a bit nervous. Their prep room had been well stocked with simple furniture and water bottles. He took a deep breath to calm himself. It wasn't rational to get worried now. He would have to prove himself in the festival. Midoriya, Todoroki said. The heterochromatic boy stood in front of Izuku's chair. I look forward to facing you in this tournament. You have proved that you are truly strong at the USJ. While I know it wasn't a conscious effort, the fact that you have that much power serves to showcase your chance at number 1. Isn't that right? I guess you're right. Most of us, including myself, are aiming for number 1. We'll settle it at the festival, won't we? Izuku said, a grin on his face. Shoto simply had a small smile. Yeah, I guess so. With that he left. Momo turned to Izuku. He considers you a rival. Well, I should not be surprised. Izuku nodded, but before he could reply he heard the announcement for them to prepare for the entrance. Looking around, he saw his classmates were still a bit overwhelmed by the pressure. Izuku walked up to the door and turned to the class. He clapped to gain everyone's attention. I'm not really sure what to say in this situation, but I feel as though I should tell you this. The festival, while important, isn't worth getting anxious over. The most important thing about the festival is to have fun. You shouldn't have to think that there is a guillotine over your head. Just do your best, guys. Don't sweat the small stuff. Izuku saw that his classmates looked a bit better than before. While not at a 100%, it was enough. Soon enough, Class 1A was led to the northernmost gate onto the stadium's floor. They listened to present Mick's welcoming speech until he said, and now the athletes. First is this festival's favorites. The students who fought off a villain attack on the USJ with incredible power from Heroic Course, Class A. They emerged from the gate and stepped out onto the grass field. Izuku in front of his class, head held up high. He looked to where the pros were sitting and stared determinedly. Following them is Heroic Course Class B, and then Classes C, D, and E from General Studies. Classes F, G, and H from the Support Course. And of course, the Business Courses. I, J, and K. Present mic finished as the students congregated on the stadium grounds. A stage rose from the ground, and a female hero dressed in leather and latex walked on. We're going to begin with the athlete's oath. Midnight, the R-rated hero shouted. Your student representative is Midoriya Izuku of Class 1A. Izuku walked up to the platform and stood in front of the mic. The sports festival is an event designed for the next generation to prove that they are strong to carry on the legacy left behind by their predecessors. It is a chance for us to prove that we are capable of carrying the torch passed on each generation and to lead us to a better future. And now on this stage, all of us here have no barriers, whether they be from the hero course, the general, or support or business. The fact is we are here to prove ourselves, and we will give our best. With that, Izuku walked away from the mic after giving a bow to the crowd. He was greeted by smiles from the students of all courses. Well, now that's over, Midnight said, voice filled with pride. Let's get going. The first event is the qualifier where dreams are crushed and many of you will be sent home crying. This year's event is. She pointed at the large screen, which flashed and showed obstacle course. The first preliminary event is an obstacle race between all 11 first-year classes through a near 4 kilometers long course around the stadium. Aside from leaving the course, participants were allowed to do anything. The first 42 students to finish the race will earn the right to advance and participate in the next event. So best of luck, kids. Izuku watched as everyone stood in formation in the gate of the stadium. The first test was designed to weed out the competition by pitting themselves against each other. Izuku looked at the narrow pathway, and suddenly it hit him. Ignoring the whistle, Izuku ran back and let the others pass him, which caused some commotion in the audience, especially among the pros. Izuku then focused the max amount of one for all he could control into a single jump. Golden lightning seemed to erupt from his body, and taking everyone by surprise, he reached 3/4 of the entire wall and then shot a chain which he pulled to propel him to the top. He looked to see ice creeping up from the door. Knowing that Todoroki must have the competition, Izuku once again used one for all to pass the crowd, and even passing Todoroki. At the commenters box, Aizawa, what the hell have you been feeding that kid? Present Mike screamed. Aizawa simply gave a smirk and replied, Midoriya Izuku is one unique character. He was the first in the entrance exam and also played a huge part in the USJ along with Todoroki and Bakugo. I wouldn't be surprised if they completely blew us away with their skills. His voice laced with pride. With Todoroki. As Todoroki looked up and saw a green-yellow blur pass him, he knew that it was Izuku, deciding to kick it up a notch, but before he could, he saw movement far up ahead, and at the edge of his vision, he saw huge robots blocking the way. He also noticed that Izuku had slowed as well. Taking his chance, he used his quirk to boost him forward. Icicle Road. Ice shot from his feet, giving him a boost that only left him a few meters behind Izuku, while simultaneously slowing the competition down. As Izuku stared down the robots, he knew that he'd have finished them to keep his lead. He raised his arm much like he was throwing a spear and shouted, Battle Arts, Heavenly Spear. A bright spear formed in his arm, and as it was thrown and struck the robot, a violent explosion rocked the area. Todoroki, on the other hand, formed a tidal wave of ice to destroy the robots. This led to the robots to be frozen unbalanced, causing it to topple over the other athletes, while many evaded it, mostly from the hero course. Those in the general studies classes were unable to, and just when the robot was about to crash on them. Battle Arts, Holy Smite. An eruption of gold energy destroyed the robot into pieces which harmlessly flew to the sides. They turned to see Izuku with a palm outstretched, and the students gave him a sincere smile. Commenter box. Wow, that Todoroki kid sure packs a punch to be able to freeze so many robots at once, and that too without an effort. Although he should be mindful of the collateral damage he may cause. But then again, Izuku shines again, rescuing the students from injury. Aizawa simply scared. Todoroki is fighting to win. He is on a different level than most, which is why he is gunning for first. And it seems Midoriya has dropped to 10th place, with most of those who passed being from the hero course. Let's see what he'll do next. With Izuku. Izuku scared at losing his lead, but his hero complex, LOL, refused to let him leave them helpless. He saw that Todoroki was about to begin the rope stage. Izuku decided to bust some moves. Izuku focused ether to his soles and burst past 2 people ahead of him. The moment his feet touched the ground, he used another burst to propel him forward onto the edge of the rope, putting him in 5th place. He saw that Todoroki and Bakugo were head-to-head, but seemed to intent on sabotaging each other while trying to evade the mines. With barely a kilometer between them and 1st place, Izuku knew he'd have to do something drastic. Flooding his legs with OFA, he ran to the minefield, and a few feet from the minefield, he used ether to give him a major boost, putting him in the air past both Todoroki and Bakugo, who saw the threat and stopped trying to sabotage each other. Izuku, knowing that they would overtake him easily, decided to seal that chance off. He aimed his hand at the ground a few feet away from both of them and said, Battle Arts, Sword Barrage. Multiple swords struck the area in front of Bakugo and Todoroki, blocking their progress. Izuku, seeing his chance, shot a chain at one of trees outside of the minefield and pulled himself, channeling his magic. With just a 100 between him and victory, Izuku ran with his body augmented by his magic. Todoroki and Bakugo boosted their speed to catch up to him, but it was all for naught as Izuku claimed 1st place.